You guys did. I was like, oh, I didn't even have to be here. Perfect. Thank you guys.
Yeah, you did. You really did help us out. Thank you.
No, we're good. I didn't give you all the information. That was the problem.
Nah. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for taking. Oh, see you guys.
Okay. Oh, this is not important. Okay, let's try.
Alex, give me a wave. Just wave. Yeah. I just want to see what the lag is on the camera.
It's a good 15 seconds.
Okay. Sweet. I know that wasn't like the ideal time, like we are still set up late. The ideal timing, we are still late. But this was way better than last time. I think we should all be very excited.
Although meanwhile we still
Well, I think we have enough. We have form, right?
Yes, may I go through the,
well,
is Joshua good in attendance online or in person?
Hey everybody, how's it going?
That's Richard.
Hi, Rich.
Yeah? Hello.
Is Matt in there as well?
Are you with Matt, Richard?
Yeah, Matt's here as well. Yeah, Matt's here as well.
Okay.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah. Crystal clear.
Okay, cool. Cool.
So,
We're gonna mute ourselves until we can speak.
thank you. Jacques is unexcused. Joshua is unexcused unless he's online.
Hi.
Joshua, you
I'm
there?
on the phone.
Okay, perfect.
This is Jack.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Jacques. Does anyone know if Joshua's in attendance online?
Josh sent me an email, so he's not gonna make it.
Okay. Is he excused, Elizabeth?
Yep.
Elisa is not here. We're on the phone. Did she contact you and send an email? Okay. ASU? Is ASU present online or here? I think it's Jess. Is Jess the ASU representative?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he's not online as far as I can tell.
Mohammed Atlaf, is he online?
Nope, not there.
Lenny?
No, but Lenny messaged me.
Okay. America or Katie?
Katie is excused. She might come partway through. I did not hear from America.
If any of them join late, please let me know. I'll mark it in the minutes. Yu Chen?
Nope.
Ron?
No.
Katie's here.
Okay. Very good.
Okay. Noted. Sophus? That's the pharmacist study?
I think so.
GBDA? Katerina?
Nope.
Oliver Campbell?
Nope. And I didn't receive anything.
Oliver messaged me. He'd be here in 2 minutes.
Okay, I will change his unexcused to attendance on the rest.
Jerry's here.
Instead of chat messages.
Jerry is in. Yeah, I have him in voice.
They
Oh,
can,
perfect.
but
Okay.
also.
Josh, you are updated now to being in attendance. Okay, we have quorum.
Sorry, did you call my name in attendance? I'm not sure if I heard that correctly or not.
I don't know who's speaking, sorry.
Sorry, it's Yusuf.
Yeah, Yusuf, I've got you in attendance.
Alright.
Perfect.
Sorry, do you have Lenny on attendance?
Oh no, I thought Lenny was excused. Is he on the call?
No, he's not excused. He's here.
Okay, Lenny in attendance.
Perfect.
And before we begin, I wanted to give a note. Matt and I will work in group, but when we get to Ottawa, we'll speak dive right into a meeting, so we'll likely only be here for our update.
Okay. Don't drive and
Okay,
call at the
thank
same
you.
time, it's not safe. Make sure you're not
It's hands-free. It's hands-free, don't worry.
Okay.
It's all about the safety. Okay. So in that case,
Vincent's asking if he was listed in attendance.
Yes, he's in attendance. Everyone who was marked online as
And
of 2 minutes
yeah,
ago.
Bronx Yao
we
Lee.
got him.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So in that case, I think we can call this meeting to order. So first up, we have approval of the agenda. I think there were a couple things that people wanted to add to the agenda. Seneca, do you?
They'll come up during my presentation. Just for notice, there was resignation from PPC. I'll bring it up during my secretarial updates, and we can fill the vacancy then.
Something about Senate?
Oh, yes, sorry, thank you. There's one item, though, I'd like to consider adding to the agenda. It might be more appropriate to immediately refer to the committee, so this is your call. Aisha Shibley asked me to bring forward a discussion on additional rules for senators for election, those pertaining to what necessary forms need to be signed. So we require councillors acknowledge that they will have to sign a conflict of interest form, as will executives when they are running, so that they know in advance that they have to sign a public form of their conflicts of interest if they get the positions. Aisha asked if there was anything similar from the Senate, and since council can pass rules regarding elections to the Senate for undergraduate senators, whether or not it would be worth putting that in. I'd like to refer that to the Senate undergrad caucus if that's appropriate. If there's any objections to that. And I'll add an amendment to, if there's no objections, I'll include an amendment to the agenda at the very end that will include a referral to the Senate undergrad caucus for those elections considerations.
Okay, so in that case, does anyone else have anything they would like to say about the agenda? Alright, so in that case, we can approve the agenda and move on to the territorial acknowledgements. So we would just like to acknowledge that the University of Waterloo is on traditional territory. The University of Waterloo is situated on the Halaman Tract land promised to the Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. So we can move on to the approval of the minutes. Because it was such a short turnaround from our last meeting, I believe the minutes are not available. Is that correct? Alright, so we're just going to push it off until the next meeting, and we'll vote on the two sets for the next meeting in January.
Do we have to put a motion to table? Yeah, I'm just going to say, motion to table to the January meeting.
Alright, perfect. So all in favor of tabling the approval of the minutes until the January meeting?
Okay, I think we can say it's unanimous.
Yeah. If anyone has an objection, that's...
If anyone wants an objection or abstention noted.
I'll let us know. Alright, so then we can move on to our reports. So we have our executive reports. First up is you, Richard.
If it's a little bit louder, we're being a little bit, or a lot, during our little drive here. Just as a note, on the couple of things that I sent out to the council mailing list, just wanted to make sure that you got it and that you guys are aware. The university has drafted one more time. They drafted a freedom of speech policy for review. They sent it out to all of the relations committees, including the undergraduate relations committee, and they were looking for feedback from all undergraduates. If you have any comments, any thoughts, or any feedback on that at all, please forward your thoughts to comment@fed.ca. There is a deadline tomorrow at 10 a.m., Monday 10 a.m., but as I asked the Secretariat, she's always open to hearing any of your thoughts at any time. But just so you know that there is a deadline for that. Secondly, I also sent out a email on behalf of our web team, just for a card sort activity that's going to be happening next week, Wednesday and Thursday. If you're at all interested, please go to the link and sign up. That card sort exercise is just to help the web team reorganize what the governance space will look like. And it's really helpful because, for anybody who's trying to navigate our site to look for bylaws and such, it's really important. So if you have some time and would like to contribute, we'd love to have you there Wednesday and Thursday as well. And then other than that, I also am hiring an election event coordinator. If you or anybody else is interested, the deadline for applications is tonight at 8 o'clock. If you have any questions or anything like that, or really related to anything, please let me know.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. Does anyone have any questions for Richard? that case, we can move on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, for sure. So can you say your name?
Just a question about the waterfall committee. How are we doing for that?
With the number of events that happened in October, well, just all term really, unfortunately we haven't been able to convene. If the committee members would like, we can convene in December online, or I can quickly throw up a Google Doc just to get ideas out there. What I'll probably end up doing is sending out a form for everybody, just to put in their availability for the winter term, so we can determine regular meetings. It'll probably be 5 weeks meetings of winter.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Richard.
Okay.
Oh.
You're welcome. Thank
Who
you.
is it that just asked that question?
Sorry?
Can you say your name, whoever just asked the question?
Jerry.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Does anyone else have anything for Richard before we move on?
Yeah. So this is Lenny. So my understanding is that the purpose of the Water Power Committee is to allow students to submit the naming, design, and style of a best mascot. So has the infrastructure to allow such naming design? I assume it hasn't been created yet. Is there an anticipated date on when it will be created?
There currently isn't a anticipated date, but I'd be more than happy to have that as the first agenda item for discussion at the committee. When we initially speak in the late spring term, we were just discussing sort of the waterfowl itself. Well, it's I guess the committee namesake, but it's knowing that we should probably open it up to students generally for submission. That will probably be the first agenda item for discussion. Thank you for raising that. I'll be sure to add it.
Okay, that's great. I think Mr. Good would also like to thank you. So a question about the FED's mailing list. Do you know if FED's currently has its own mailing list in which every student is a part of, so that FED's can broadcast messages to the students?
Matt's going to chime in here. And Lenny? Hello, everyone. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but this is a really good question. It's something that we're currently in discussions about with the university registrar. We've identified it as something that's really important for marketing purposes and for governance purposes. It's something that I've been collaborating with the registrar about. I don't think it's something that is going to happen within the governing year, but I'm optimistic it's something that we could see for future years.
So just to clarify, because I know you're speaking over the phone to the council meeting and that's speaking over the phone to us. So just to clarify, does that mean FEDS currently does not have its own mailing list?
FEDS currently does not have a mailing list of all of its members, no. Anything that we're sending out to all members goes through the registrar's office.
Do you know if in the past FEDS has had its own mailing list?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Do you know if in the past years FEDS had its own mailing list?
I don't have that knowledge.
Okay. Do you know if FEDS currently has a memorandum of understanding with the registrar's office or some kind of written document about our usage policy of the mailing list?
We currently do not. That's the kind of stuff that I'm currently working with the registrar on.
Okay. Okay, great. Do you know if like how likely this is to work out?
I'm optimistic that it's something that we can get for next year. Nothing is guaranteed, but we've had a positive working relationship with the registrar. I think it's something that we could see for the next academic year.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Richard?
Before we go forward,
yeah.
sorry,
Sorry,
let me please wait. Before we go forward, can you guys ask Elizabeth to speak before you speak? Because like normally speaking goes to the speaker, and I know it's easy to have a back and forth with the counselor. It is really tough for me to get everything you said when there's two really quick back-to-back questions, and I can't write in the minutes fast enough. So I jot down like the ideas, and I have to go back and rewatch the video. So I'd appreciate if you could just check with Elizabeth before asking your second question so that I can make sure stuff's in the minutes part.
Yeah, if you shoot me a note on the message thing, I'll see it. I've got that open as well.
Okay.
So if you want to
can I ask
speak,
my
just
next
say.
question?
Yeah. Okay, so who would like to ask the next question?
Lenny raises his hand.
Okay, Lenny, go for it.
Okay. So this one's for Richard. Back in June, there was a discussion about the first year council, which is to facilitate first year student union engagement and awareness of the resources and services provided by FED. Council passed a motion to refer this discussion on first year engagement to the President's Advisory Committee. So the question is, what progress has PAC made on increasing first year engagement?
With respect to that particular item, that did go to PAC, but unfortunately PAC has also been unable to convene this term due to the number of events that have happened just overall during the term. A poll has gone out, and regular meeting dates will be set. Again, I'll ask members of PAC to ascertain whether they would like a meeting, just a quick sort of catch-up meeting during the month of December. However, anticipating that people are in exams and they'll probably want to go back to the holidays. What I'll probably end up doing is throwing up a document as well, just to get some cursory thoughts on this question and other questions as well.
Okay.
So the council's aware, PAC is required to move this.
Yet has only met once its entire governing year.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to ask Richard about his report?
Yes. Sorry, I think I might have missed one of the comments. In the past month,
So can you say your name before you speak, right? So, for Seneca's sake, can you say your name? For Seneca's sake, so you can take minutes better, can you please say your name well before you speak?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Connection problem. This is Lenny. Okay, so because PAC wasn't mentioned a lot in some of the previous reports, I was just wondering how many times has it met in the past 8 months?
It has met once.
It's met once.
Sorry?
It's met once in June, and that is it.
Okay.
It's required to meet monthly per procedure. That's a standing order of council.
Is there anything else for Richard, or can we move on?
Yeah, Lenny has another question.
All right, go for it, Lenny.
So this is for Richard. So Richard, you've been in office for 8 months. What would you say is your landmark accomplishment?
I wouldn't say that there is anything quote unquote landmark.
Okay.
All right. So at this point, I'm going to suggest if anyone else has any questions for Richard, they ask them offline, and that we move on. Matt, how long till you guys get to Ottawa and have to go? Should you speak next, or should we go in order? Matt? All right, so let's go in order in that case. Savannah.
I guess it's kind of most of it's outlined in my report that I submitted. Alex, Austin, and I are working on the mental health policy, and we'll have the draft for the beginning of January for BBC to look over. But that's the only additional, that's the only additional piece to my report. So if anyone has any questions, ask away.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions for Savannah? Can you take those to no?
Wait, actually, Jerry says he has a question.
Oh, okay, perfect. Jerry, go for it.
Hello?
Yeah, Jerry.
Hello?
Yeah, Jerry, you can go.
Oh. Sorry.
Hello?
Actually, I think it's Lenny who has a question.
Sorry. Go again.
Okay, yeah, Lenny, you can ask your question.
Oh, okay. So hey, Savannah. So you mentioned in your report that MATE is expanding into B1 and UWP. Just one question, and this is the same question that was asked in June 5th, 2016, 2 years ago, when MATES first became a Fed service. Do you know what metrics are used to evaluate the success of the MATES program?
That's a great question. It's actually something we're working on right now. Residents has a few questions they would like us to look at, such as do students feel like having spoken to a mate that now they feel more comfortable or they have good rapport? So there's some questions that residents would like us to add now that to our questionnaire. I guess it's the wrong word, but the questionnaire now that they're involved in the process. So we're working on a bit of a survey that is available for anyone who attends MATES to fill out if they would like. There's no pressure to, knowing that they can be discussing rather sensitive information and people may be in a more vulnerable state when they discuss with a mate. So it by no means would be necessarily a mandatory thing, but should students feel like they would like to fill out this response, they can. CLAC is also working on metrics for evaluating services, which includes mates, and so we're working on a document on how we review the success of the service, what needs to be included, kind of like soft, hard metrics, and so that should be coming sometime in the winter term for information with council.
And sorry guys, just on the conference call, if people in the back are talking, can we pass them the microphone?
There's one right here. Unless
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
too quiet.
it's too quiet.
Okay, I'm
That's
so sorry.
No, don't worry about it. But just for moving on. Okay, cool. Does anyone else have any questions for Savannah before we move on?
Sorry, this is Richard and Matt. Sorry, the phone for whatever reason cut out, disconnected.
Yeah.
I understand there was another question.
No, there wasn't. For questions, I said we were gonna let people ask you them offline after that.
Savannah, when did you say?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
When did you say the mental health policy work with the PPC subcommittee would be done?
We're looking to bring it to PPC at the beginning of January.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Savannah?
All right, perfect. So in that case, let's move on. Kurt.
Hi guys. I submitted a report with, I believe, enough information there for you. Anything else that happened, I was a celebrity chef again this, no, I'm just kidding. If you have any questions, just ask away.
Yeah.
I would just like to thank the Vice President for the detailed running of his report. I thought it was particularly good.
Nice. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Jason.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask just if there's any further update of anything that's happened with regards to the bomb shelter project.
Yeah, there's been discussions with the board, and we're looking at the next steps right now.
Any particular next step in mind?
Just figuring out the best way to better the student experience at the bomb shelter pub. So it's there's just been lots of conversations about it.
So Lenny has a question. Lenny, you can go.
Hi, Kurt. Yeah, this is Lenny. We're just wondering on this side, what would you say after being 8 months in office and advocating for students, what would you say are your landmark accomplishments?
I say my biggest accomplishment, well, you'll see it a lot in my action plan update that's going to be sent out because I feel like there's multiple. I'd say one of my biggest ones that isn't written on my action plan that I'm working on right now is getting the university fair trade certified with our commercial operations. I've been working with the sustainability office to allow that to happen, and we should be able to get that for January. Another update would be for the U-Pass, allowing students with inaccessibility and Stratford students to be able to opt in for that for a bus program for them. Yeah, and also with myself from athletics, I feel like the relationship between Feds and athletics has been increasing a lot, and more people are being involved from the student body that usually you expect not to be a part of student governance. So that's a huge one, I think, as well, just strengthening the community.
Nice. Does anyone else have any questions for Kurt? Cool. So in that case, let's move on to Matt. Matt, are you there?
Yes, I am. I don't know how well you can hear me though.
It's alright, just go for it. Most of what we can do.
I couldn't make that out. Sorry.
You're actually pretty clear.
Okay, excellent. Hello, everybody. I hope you all had a chance to do my report. There's a couple things I would pull your attention to. The first one is we hired an academic affairs commissioner to fill in the role of the last academic affairs commissioner left open last time. We additionally, just overall, October, November tend to be very advocacy, external advocacy type of as a advocacy type of me. With very external focus with the GA, the Lucky Week, and then youth group. So that has been successful. It's also meant that the last couple of weeks our scheduled stuff with regard to fees, which has been noted that conditions not met in the last couple of weeks. I don't think there are any particularly pressing matters for it. The booster review panel has not completed its report for this test. We don't see that as a major obstacle. Beyond that, more than willing to field any questions about anything in my report or in general. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Matt? Yes, go for it, Alex.
Hey Matt, this is Alex. So I just wanted to ask about USA, because I saw on social media that it looks like you had a great time lobbying some of USA's policies in Queen's Park. I just wanted to hear a bit more about what happened there and what type of policies you're promoting.
Really happy for that question, Alex. Richard and I both attended provincial advocacy week that happens every year. We went up, and most of what happens there is meetings between mixed teams of representatives from various and with MPs or MPs for some of the things that we were lobbying on were our newly passed tuition scams, experiential learning, sexual violence. We're pulling off in big we have a list of 6 of them. If you'd like to go to them all, I can. Largely, they were split into 2 teams. One, preparing graduates for the workforce, and the second one being safe and healthy campus. There were specific policy asks, those for us teams. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then I think Lenny has a question. Lenny, do you want to go? Lenny?
Yep. Yeah, we're over here.
All right, perfect. You can go.
So, Matt, during the previous meeting, a councillor expressed dissatisfaction over the Waterloo Works fee. So the question is, it turns out there's also an annual maintenance fee to Waterloo Works. Would you happen to know what the annual maintenance fee is?
I'm not familiar with what the annual maintenance fee is. I would assume that that's something that falls under their cost, so I can't speak definitively. When that dissatisfaction was expressed, Quicken seriously brought it up with co-op at our last meeting with our co-op student experience manager, faculty manager, and we're going to be looking into providing student input. It's still in its early stages. An update there as well.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
Lenny has a follow-up.
All right, Lenny, go for your follow-up.
Hey Matt, so do you know if it's possible to find out what the annual maintenance fee is, or is that something that's better for councillors to directly ask co-op?
The amount in maintenance fee is definitely something Connor and I can bring up and see if that information is accessible. or co-op is just willing to tell us. But at this point, I don't know it offhand.
Okay.
We can do that if you'd like.
Lenny, do you have a follow-up, or are you good?
Yes, that would be awesome. Yes, Lenny has a follow-up. Okay. Yeah, so Matt, in your report.
How'd you know where to go? Sorry.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah, in your report, you mentioned that the
No, I got it.
Oh my God. Lenny, please go ahead.
You got it.
Okay, and so this is a question for Matt. In his report, he mentioned, Matt mentioned that the co-op office is looking into a new co-op fee. And the purpose of this not co-op fee, a new co-op employment statistics. And the purpose of this employment statistic is that it's supposed to be more transparent. But after reading it, I couldn't make heads or tails of this new statistics. So would there be a time, maybe next month or next month, where council could be briefed about what this new statistic is?
Can absolutely bring that to our next council meeting. We discussed it briefly at co-op student council. If anybody wants to fill you in the interim, or if you'd like to send me an email follow-up, I'd be glad to follow up with you directly as well.
All right, Lenny, are you okay? Lenny, do you have anything else?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, perfect. Does anyone else have any questions for Matt before we move on?
Yes.
All right, can you say your name?
Yes, Lenny.
All right, go for it, Lenny.
Okay. Hey Matt, so just a question. So given that you've been in office for 8 months and advocating for students, what would you say is your landmark accomplishment?
Well, I guess this is one thing I forgot to put in my report, but I'll be sending out a summary of my action plan achievements briefly to council. I submitted a report to the board. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing is still ongoing. I have to say that the biggest thing that sorry, there's like staying on one way. Sorry, the other. The biggest thing that has been achieved is probably all of the election turnouts that we've been able to drive for the municipal, provincial, and for the fall reading break votes. Especially when I don't know the comparatives to the provincial election, but I know we saw a 6-fold increase in voter turnout at the on-campus stations for municipal votes, and obviously we saw approximately 30% undergraduate turnout in the referendum on fall rate.
Matt, sorry, Alex, yes.
Hey Matt, this is Alex. I have one more question about USA. I just, since you mentioned that, I pulled up the list of USA's policies, and I saw that just a few weeks ago, when USA decided its new policies, one of the things that it decided was to ask the provincial government to rescind their directive on free speech. And I was wondering if this was something you were dealing with and asking the government to do while you were in Queen's Park, because of course we all have different opinions on this here at council.
Yes, that was something that was included in every brief that was handed out in the meetings that I was in, and if that was something that the MPP chose to speak about, it was something that I spoke to as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, unless anyone else has anything to say, we can move on to the report from the Board of Directors. So I think that'll be given to Senator.
I'd like to ask Savannah a question. Savannah, given that you've been in office, what would you say your landmark accomplishment has been?
I was waiting for the question, so
I'm so sorry that you didn't get asked earlier.
Can I chime in? Hello?
Oh, no, Richard, that was to Savannah. I'd like, sorry. No. Please, no.
What? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I was trying to think about this while the others got asked so that I could, have like a really strong answer coming in, but I feel like there's been a number of things that I've been really happy that have happened over the last 7 months, and so one of which is Raise will be officially launched in winter, and that's really awesome. They had their first event this past week in partnership with the Women's Center in Glow. Another thing is I'm working closely with the satellite campus societies to see what services we can bring to their campuses. So we're taking the food bank to 2 of 3 campuses for the fall term, and are getting to the 3rd campus for the winter term, and are looking at maybe how we can bring mates or the bike center to the other campuses, because those things like ones they're interested in. Yeah, so I've been really excited about that. And as I'm speaking, all of my action plan updates that I have written out are gone from my head. So coming next council, you'll have more information, but those are some of the big ones that I'm really excited about. Yeah, and wellness days. That was awesome. I like that. Those are fun. Okay, any thoughts, questions, concerns?
Or we can move on to the next section of our agenda.
Would it be amenable for me to finish, I guess, my response on that question? Because everybody else
That was not.
had a fair.
Sure, Richard, do you want to talk?
Sorry?
Richard?
Yeah, just very quickly. Yeah, because everybody asked about landmarks, and mine got cut off because of a disconnected phone. I just wanted to, I guess, let everybody know that a majority of my time is spent on university committees to make sure that, I guess, undergraduates are represented. But that said, we are Amanda Cook, who's the University Sexual Violence Response Coordinator, and I have been working a lot on trying to figure out ways to bring bystander intervention training to campus and make sure that we have a plan in place to embed it within various areas within the next couple of years. A lot of that movement is going to happen during, like, a lot of the planning, is going to happen around December, January. I know that there is a plan right now to sort of bring it as an introductory type of program to a couple of events that aren't going to be happening in the early winter term. One of the things that we're planning right now is social consent, something that I've been helping her with. And one of the ways that we want to embed this is sort of as a standalone event where one of the facilitators will come in, and whoever's sort of interested can just sort of pop into the training. And in that way, we're trying to evaluate whether it's a useful sort of training that we can provide to those at the university.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So, Richard, I just wanted to quickly ask about the sexual violence prevention and response advocacy on campus. I know in April 2017, when I was on council, we passed an advocacy policy to push for greater advocacy towards the university for this. It was something that Chris Lolis and then Antonio after him, especially Antonio, really pushed for in his year, but nothing much came from it. And so I'm wondering, has that just been because of university bureaucracy, like having to go through the hoops and barrels that the university puts in the way? Or has it just been because, like, the government issued a directive on this, 2 years ago, Kathleen went, I believe? So, like, this is something that the university had to develop a while ago, and it seems a lot of our asks haven't gotten implemented, or have not yet gotten implemented. I'm just wondering how something like this becomes a 3-year process when it's something incredibly important to students.
Are you speaking about the sexual violence response policy?
Yeah, and associated support on campus for issues related to sexual violence and response and prevention. I mean, ideally, you shouldn't need to respond to it because it should be prevented in the first place.
Yeah, I think that policy 42 it's included in my action plan, just my executive update, regular executive update. Policy 42 recently, there are drafts of the policy and the procedure after a lot of time. And I'm hopeful that that draft will run through committee sort of feedback first. And I'm really hopeful that it'll come out for public consultation in the winter sometime. The problem with, not the problem, just with 33 is ethical behavior and 42. It's just, the policies are so dense and they're so far reaching and they affect so many different people that there has to be a lot of input, and that's really one of the biggest reasons why it's taking so long. Like 33 has been running, the review, quote unquote, has been running for, well over 2-3 years. But there have been drafts there too, and I'm really hopeful that that's going to go to public consultation soon. So to answer your question sort of in a less sort of wordy way, I think a lot of it has to do with bureaucracy and making sure that everybody's heard, but at the same time, we want to make sure that the entire community gets its input before something that big gets put out.
Okay. So if you have a follow-up, or you good?
Yeah.
You're good?
I will note, policy 33 doesn't apply to students because it's only for faculty and staff. So
Yeah.
like, I'm glad it's getting reviewed, but that shouldn't be our priority. Like, it seems that sexual violence response and prevention should kind of be at the forefront of some of the stuff we're doing. It was an ask from council.
Yeah, 42, sorry.
Like, it was like.
Richard is also driving in fairness, just
Yes.
so clear.
Sorry about that. 42 is definitely the one that I have that's sort of a little bit bigger in my head. But 33 is interesting because it also interacts with students in a number of different ways. Like, yes, it doesn't apply to students, but I think that there's something to be said about, like, if, you know, a student is involved, and there are many different ways that a student can interact with that policy. I think it's useful for them to have it in there still. But that said, 42 is a major focus for me, and it's feeling pretty good right now in terms of the university is really cooperative, and they seem to like the ideas that we're bringing forward in the meetings. And Amanda and I are really excited to sort of push for more support and more training at the university.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything to move on to say, or can we move on to the reports from the board of directors? All right. So, Seneca, whenever you're ready, you can give that.
All right.
And you can keep it a little bit concise. That'd be nice.
Sorry, last time I also, given our short meeting, didn't have time to prepare a written report.
That's okay.
From the last time. We will be having a board meeting tomorrow, Monday. That's Monday evening. Some of the things that have been top priorities for the board so far in our upcoming meeting and the prior meeting. The board's annual plan is an update being provided by Thompson and myself at the coming meeting. In part of that, the governance calendar for the organization will have the counselors, directors, and officers will have access to has been produced. It's just we're entering in important dates like policy renewal, policy expiry dates, policy review dates, things like that, to keep the entire organization kind of on top of our upcoming deadlines. Executive action plan updates are being provided to the board at Monday's meeting. Budget practices have been reformed substantially, so all budgets will now be vetted by the Budget and Appropriations Committee. This was an ask made at the general meeting, but the general meeting lost a quorum, so this one may have been implemented. We'll be reappointing the auditor at our next meeting because the AGM lost a quorum. We're limited to reappointing last year's auditor. Council seat allocations are currently being determined, so we're considering a couple different elements here. There's a question of whether or not we use IAP data, that's institutional analysis and planning, or the registrar's office's data, and there's advantages to both sets. That's something the board will be debating at the next meeting. And how to handle multiple and interfaculty studies. So do you see 2 votes for students who are in programs that are between 2 faculties? Do you see 1 vote and they get to choose which one they vote? Or do we just give them the vote for where their department is housed? For instance, nanotechnology engineering is housed under chemical or electrical engineering. No, chemical engineering, sorry. So would they get an engineering vote or would they get a science vote? Which is where that's split, or some similar questions can be asked for like CFM and stuff like that. The date of the winter GM has been planned, and we're reviewing and revising some of the task force's recommendations. We'll present council updates with this when they come forward. So this includes making changes to the existing set of recommendations and seeking greater consultation on new ideas like implementing town halls, which we want to strengthen. That was some of the recommendations that came out of the discussions we held with the general meeting. And last but not least, Richard brought this up too, but there's a Fed's card sort coming up. Please feel free to participate in Monday's invite session. I sent it to all of you. There's also regular sessions later on. And you can share that with any friends you have in committee services, admins, and governance side of things. So, welcome any questions.
Jason.
So, yeah, about the using data for council seat allocation, is the difference between the 2 sources has to do with counting co-op students?
I'm just going to write down your questions.
I can actually try and answer that if that's okay.
Please, Richard.
Yeah. So the question was whether the counting is dependent on co-op or not. Currently, no. The IAP data and the registrar's data both count for co-op students. The major difference between the two data sets is, the fact that the IAP data set is delayed by an entire term, and the registrar's data is, they only count those who are fees arranged. So depending on when you pull the data, that can change quite substantially. But that's sort of that aspect. Does that fully answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, does anyone else have any questions for Richard? Or sorry, for Seneca, my gosh. Alright, so seeing nothing, we can move on to the reports from the officers of council.
Sorry, I just wanted to also give an update.
So then
We've
can you say your
arrived and
name?
we have to go to another meeting, but thank you. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Alright, see you, Rich.
Okay, see you everybody.
And I assume that's by Matt as well, yeah?
Yep.
I guess. Okay, so I don't really have much to give us a report. As speaker, Jason, do you have anything you want to say as deputy speaker?
I'd actually just like to say, just in terms of questions that were asked early on, I think it's good to remind everyone that committee meetings are, while the committees have memberships, the meetings are open to everyone with certain exceptions. So especially if it's like something about co-op or something, if you have like a co-op specific issue, your best bet may be to contact the exec overseeing that committee. They're actually obligated if you contact them to inform you of meetings and when something's going to be on the agenda for a meeting. So if you have a specific issue, that may be your best way of approaching it, especially since we have committees designated to discuss specific issues.
For the co-op, sorry. Yeah, I am part of CSC, but I wasn't able to attend because of co-op, ironically. So I was reading the meeting minutes, just for clarification.
Yeah, so again, I would suggest that you contact Matt by email or something, and I'd also suggest you look into options, although I realize we're getting to the end of term, but in general, also for people on co-op, most committees will let you call in if you ask about it, so I'd suggest all councillors on committees well aware that they look into the option of calling into a meeting.
Also, as a reminder, if you're on the phone, please say your name before you speak. It's really challenging for Seneca, otherwise taking minutes. Okay.
Okay, thanks. That was Lenny who was speaking. Thanks.
Okay, so we can move on to the secretary report. Seneca?
Guys, let me put on a different hat here. So I just want to inform council about a couple things. So I'm going to start with the least destructive thing. So the first thing is just a question to throw to Savannah, actually. As IAC seat filling, is that occurred for the vacancy?
Not for the at-large seat.
Okay, so we don't need to ratify that. That's what I need to double check. So dotting my I's, crossing my T's. So I would like to inform council, Asif Nawaz was our at-large member on Policies and Procedure Committee. He had to resign his co-op coming up the next term, and he wasn't able to make a couple of meetings this term, and said that he felt more comfortable resigning from the committee than staying on and not being able to participate. So there's an absence there. You can ask council what you'd like to do with respect to that. It's an at-large seat. Procedure dictates we fill the at-large member if we can first, and then fill the council as well. At-large members present themselves. Seeing as we'll have probably one PPC meeting and still have quorum over the December term, December month, and then we'll be able to present something early January because our first meeting is on the 13th. There should be time to find an at-large member for that seat. I'll just kind of toss that to council for what you guys would like to do.
Point of inquiry. Do committees still have the ability to like fill at-large seats subject to ratification by council?
Like fill them themselves?
Yeah.
I don't know that that's all procedural allowed, like procedurally allowed thing. I mean, technically any decision can be made by a subset of councilors, and if it's ratified at a future council meeting, it carries.
Okay, then I'm going to actually put a motion up.
Okay.
I'd like to move that PPC have the ability to select someone to fill the at-large seat subject to ratification by council.
So Jason Swan moves that. Can we just make that committees, because IAC is.
Yes, sure. Yeah, for the remainder of the current governing year.
Do we have a second? Savannah? Does anyone feel we need to speak to it, or are we ready to vote? That looks like a ready to vote to me. All right. So all in favor of Jason's motion?
Okay, is anyone opposing or abstaining? Do you want?
Perfect. Online voting.
No.
Does anyone online want their vote noted, guys?
That was second by Lisa.
Yeah, no, he's just saying it.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Just in response to your question, Seneca, I'm sure we can do the same thing for PPC as I did for the IEC at large seat by posting it in the available volunteer opportunities on the Fed's website. And
Kind of getting
yeah, so I'll chat with Richard about getting that up.
perfect. If Richard's doing it, I might also touch base with Austin too.
Okay.
He's been taking on a lot of the PBC related stuff. Austin's the vice chair of PBC, but that's. There's one other item here, I'm just going to wait on something suggested. Okay, so the last item is attendance. So, Jack Houdini, the attendance, I don't know if we can pull up the attendance log. Just if you try to switch to attendance, it should.
I'm just going to turn on mine and see what.
Should be council attendance and committee log, is what it should say.
Only the council attendance transparency stuff.
On your drive?
Yeah.
Oh, here, it's right here, so it's whatever. I'll just read out if that's okay with everybody, what that looks like. So last meeting, so councilors are allowed to have two unexcused absences or 4 total absences with 1 expulsion. Vote occurs. Jack missed had enough unexcused absences to be voted on for expulsion for the spring term. He survived this vote in the spring term and was not removed from council. However, every additional unexcused absence or a total of 3 absences after may trigger an additional vote if any councilor wishes to move that item. Last November's meeting, Jack was unexcused and has been provided a warning to this effect.
I'm sorry, the log is now.
So you want to move over to the regs? Should be unexcused. You'll see the one on my line. So because of the unexcused absence, I can trigger a vote if any council wishes to move that.
Would anyone like to move that? Okay. So we can move on.
Actually, I think Benjamin has something he wants to ask.
So yeah, so Ben, you can talk. Ben?
Might be on mute.
Sorry, just took me a second there.
Yep, no worries.
I would move that we have an expulsion vote for the councilor.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Just a question.
Yeah.
If I second, do I get to speak?
Both the mover and the seconder get to speak to it. Also, just so council knows on all items, because it seems to have been misunderstanding from some people, seconding does not necessarily mean you support something. It means you believe it should go to reasonable debate.
And Katie is seconded online, just so you know.
So, your call.
I'd just like to second this.
Katie seconded it.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Oh, okay, thank you. Jason's going to create an online form.
And meanwhile, we can enter a discussion.
Yes.
Please include ID numbers and names in that so we can verify them for the record.
Okay.
Yeah, and like, just please be reasonable. Vote once. Like,
I will
just
see
do it
you
right.
count and I will discount your vote.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Ben gets to speak first, and then Katie. So Ben, do you want to talk to this?
Yeah, I guess just pursuant to council procedure or policy, whichever statute this law is under, I move that we hold an expulsion vote for the council in question due to the fact that they have twice now been eligible for expulsion and clearly haven't really corrected their actions. We should take attendance at these meetings seriously.
Yeah, fair enough. Katie? Do you want to talk to this? You don't have to if you don't want to.
My mic hates me. I just want to say that it's important to represent your constituents, and this person does not appear to be. That's what Katie has said in the chat.
So Jack, do you want to speak?
I'll speak to it. I'm always happy representing my constituents, but as a lot of other people at this university, I do not live at the University of Waterloo. I live in the GTA, and I have things, my life is in the GTA. As you know, before I had, not really cool, but I had work in Ottawa. I had to staff my boss on the weekends, and that weekend I had an orthodontist appointment. I had to get my bottom teeth filled in. I will have to go on future weekends to orthodontist appointments as I am getting treatment done for the next year. It's just something that I have to do. I have other things, but I'm always happy to serve, and I will come to every single meeting I can, but when I do have an appointment or something like that, I do have to attend. So I'm sorry that I missed that one meeting, but I have to go to dentist appointments, all that kind of stuff back home. So.
And it should be, you should be asking to be excused then.
Yeah, I am asking to be excused.
Did you ask to be excused prior to?
Austin?
Yeah, so that was going to be my question. Why did you not ask for excused?
I already know the procedure. I know that if there's a difference between excused and non-excused.
You were sent an email explaining the difference before the first expulsion vote.
I'll also note that I did go through all of those rules after the first vote because we did expel Rebel Sirwani. And we were expelled. I did explain that to the entire assembly in detail then. So then, I also sent an email to council explaining the day or two after the council made the decision to expel Rebel Sirwani.
I guess that is my mistake, but I'm always going to join future meetings, and I came to this meeting, but if you guys want to keep me, I'll leave the room and I'll step down from public office.
Okay, so I am about to email out the ballot to the mailing list. In about 30 seconds.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say?
Informally while we were waiting, can I just get a quick show of hands as people know the differences between excused and excused emphasis and to provide excused emphasis? It's not to make anyone feel bad about it, it's just so that I know if I need to send out another explanation email so that people know what the rules are. If anyone's confused, I'm happy to send them an email.
If you're unclear, can you maybe raise your hand? As I said, this is not to shame it, this is general. Make sure we're doing our jobs right.
Okay, yeah, so it is going for the mailing list now. I'm also typing the link into the chat for people connected remotely.
And I just received the email, so I assume everyone else did too.
Please vote once and only once.
Yeah, please just do the reasonable thing. We all know how this works.
Okay, so far there has been 14 votes, 15 votes cast. It's continuing to count up, so I suppose we wait another minute or so.
Yeah. And how many people are in this room? 6, 8, 10, 12.
Should reasonably expect like 20 votes or so.
Yeah. How many people in this room are on the chat as well?
I think it's just the two of us.
Alex, are you on the chat as well?
I will.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then, yeah, we should definitely be expecting it.
Okay, we have 21 now.
Yeah.
Who's this person?
I think it was good. Arena, she's on the 12.
Appreciate you can have this. And then we're going to vote for a ballot, right?
don't think so, because we
No,
do
it's
secret
secret
ballot.
ballot, and it has to be done by secret ballot, you
Okay.
cannot note the votes, we
Okay.
can note the outcome though, like we can note the outcome.
Okay,
and-
because Richard's saying that he cast and wants his abstention no, but I'm pretty sure that's invalid. Okay.
Also, he's not at the meeting, he's not allowed to vote, you need to discount his vote, so.
Oh, so I'm actually telling him to do that. Okay.
Like, he's not even being marked in attendance, he has to be marked excused, this council procedure requires you to stay for the majority of the meeting. So, although if you abstain, it makes no difference.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make sure to exclude it anyways.
Like going from an office window, the news student office has a giant window, I'm like, it's too bright.
Pretty much, yeah, it is pretty close. So,
Oliver, are you on the call?
Oliver's right here.
Oh, my bad. There we go. My bad. Yeah.
what? Emilio Cortez,
Okay.
are you, oh, sorry.
Perfect. Sorry.
We're just checking that everyone who voted is actually present in the meeting.
Yeah.
So at 1 p.m. there's something booked in the NPR. I was actually going to bring this up under other business, but I'd like to have as a it be established as a rule that Sundays between 12:30 and 3 that there's reserved slots, and that once council sets its dates, then the rest of the Sundays will be open. During those periods, the slots will be reserved again.
So,
Yeah.
wait, so Richard, okay, so Richard didn't.
No,
Oh, yeah,
he
Richard
came and
did.
asked about
Yeah,
that. I was booked it until
okay,
1.
so it's
1 o'clock onwards
I
was
just wanted to
something
check
else.
that.
She went to go check yesterday and the day before.
Can you clarify what you just said?
Okay.
I was wondering if it would be reasonable. Yeah, I'll bring it up in other
Okay,
business.
so I think we can
but it
announce the
was just to
results,
see if
right?
we could-
Okay.
And it's, even though it's a different.
Do you mean booking every
Oh, no,
like
it's
once?
Not
okay,
every
no.
Sunday, just at the very
It's
beginning of
just
term,
simple
up until the first meeting
majority,
of council, all Sundays are reserved. And then
Seneca,
thereafter, you have to do, like, you have to determine all the dates of the first Sunday.
it's like a removal is a simple majority, right?
We'll check.
I guess 2/3.
I believe, yeah, I think it's undoing a decision, so I suspect it to be 2 days. I'll check procedure right now. We ran it as 2/3 last time.
Thank you.
I believe it's 2 days.
Okay, so in that case, per the results of the vote, do I announce vote count or not?
Unless it's requested.
Okay, so per the results of the vote, a 2/3 majority has not been obtained. Therefore, Jack Cardini will remain on council. Does any council request a release of vote counts?
Alright. So seeing none, we can move on.
Certify the valid expulsion vote and order their destruction.
Okay, so first, does someone want to move a motion to certify the ballot?
I move to certify the ballot, and I further resolve that we destroy the ballots.
Second.
Perfect. All in favor?
Oh no, I need discussion on this motion. Actually, wait, there was someone's requesting a release of the vote count.
I already moved an item, I'd like it.
They put the message a minute ago. So it's your ruling on what.
Sure, yeah, let's just leave the votes count and move on.
Okay, so the vote count has been 9 votes yes, 8 votes abstention, 6 votes no. 968.
Sorry, 9 votes yes, 6 votes abstention. How many votes?
No, sorry. 9 votes yes, 6 votes no, 8 abstentions. Sorry, yeah, 7 abstentions. I forgot to exclude Richard.
I move that we certify the ballots and then
Alright, cool. And Oliver, I assume you're still gonna second that? Perfect. Alright, there was no discussion before, I'm gonna assume we still have no discussion.
who requested the vote?
Roger Lee?
Yeah, Roger Lee. You saying your name right? I'm so sorry. Okay. Alright, so all in favor? Yeah. Actually, it's just all who opposed or abstaining. And does anyone want their vote noted? If it was unanimous, then we don't need to. Never mind. Okay, let's move on. Sorry. Okay, so council reports.
Sorry, wait, what's the question?
This was to certify the ballot and destroy the vote. Destroy the ballots.
Okay.
Are we allowed to ask the officers of council questions
We've already finished voting.
after the vote?
Yeah. The vote count will be released, has been released, but yeah, we've moved on now.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to council reports.
Actually, sorry, you have a question on something unrelated to the attendance?
Yes, my question was question to the officers of council prior to, or I guess,
Right.
I assume that's the continuation after this vote count.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you can ask your question now.
Okay, just a quick question to the officers. So I sent an email to the officers about a week ago about the creation of an About Us web page that contains a blurb and picture about the councilors, which is something that the Fed executives currently have. Is there any plan to do such a thing?
Yeah, please go for it.
So the board is doing photographs and like better summary page for our website as well. Right now we're revamping the governance page. That's what this card source is for next week. I did forward along your request to Richard. So we will see where it goes. I can't speak to it right now, and I don't personally have reporting staff that would do such a thing. So that's a question to the president. I forwarded your request along.
And he's no longer on. Perfect. Okay, so then to council reports. Applied health.
Sorry. Follow up. Sorry. Here, I'll type it in.
Or you can just say it. Just yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the executive reports have used these Fed letterheads. Are councilor reports allowed to also use these Fed letterheads?
Yes, Lenny, I can send you the letterheads or send them to all of council if you want.
Okay, yes, please. Thanks.
Alright, is there anything else before I move on? Yeah.
Sorry, it's come to my attention there's a conflict between our procedures and the bylaws. The procedures specify a 2/3 vote, which is a higher standard than the bylaws specifies a simple majority of the vote of the council.
Okay.
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
It's up to the interpretation of the speaker.
So does that make the vote invalid?
It doesn't make the vote out, the results are
It makes the bylaws.
You can set different standards.
I'm going to say that the procedure, since I'm going to say that I would say that that's not a contradiction with the bylaw. If it was a lower threshold, it would be, but I think the procedure can set a higher standard.
Okay. So we're saying that the vote holds then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Would anyone like to, Jason, to explain the reasoning behind that louder? It was very good.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So basically, as Seneca's brought to our attention, the bylaws state that the threshold for a removal vote is a simple majority. Our procedure says that the threshold is 2/3. The way I'm interpreting that is I'm interpreting that we can in procedure set a stricter limitation since procedure is implementing the bylaws. If on the other hand procedure was had a lower threshold, then I would say the bylaws overruled. So therefore I'm saying that our threshold is 2/3, therefore the vote of result of not removing Jacques holds.
Okay. So unless anyone else has anything, we can move on to council reports. Alright. So, does Applied Health Sciences have anything they'd like to say?
Yeah, I just have a quick oral report. So Thompson and I held a sort of student outreach at an AHS involvement fair last month, and we asked the questions: what issues on campus are you the most passionate about? What Fed services do you want to see improved? And are there any areas of student life our campus is lacking in? Just some common themes from this event was a big focus on mental health. Someone brought up a really good point about mental health training for all staff, but specifically, or sort of mental health sensitivity training for all staff, but specifically for police services, and because they have had really horrible experiences with that. And some other common things were sort of more equity building on campus, and that's being accomplished through different Fed services. And then a really common one was actually to get the Feds, get different food outlets to accept gift cards and coupons and things like that. There was a couple of responses. And school pride was another common theme, just building a campus life and campus culture that students can all be proud of. And also someone wants my news to sell cigarettes. So that was a little interesting piece there. But yeah, just some food for thought. And that's just something that we're going to sort of think about moving forward.
Just as a note, we can't sell cigarettes.
Yeah, I figured.
Could you send me that data or question so I can include it with the minutes?
Sure.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions for Ethan before we move on? Alright, so perfect. Then we can move on to arts. Does arts have any report they'd like to give? Alright, seeing nothing. Moving on to engineering. Does anyone from engineering want to give a report?
Katie, I think it's important. Okay, NSHOP wishes everyone good luck in their exams.
Sweet sentiment.
Yeah, Lenny has something.
Alright, you can go for it then, Lenny.
Okay, so we have two reports on this side. The first is that in support of nominations and to reach more students, the Engineering Caucus has changed its Facebook page profile picture to one of the ones that Carrie suggested. The second report is that Seneca and Lenny consulted students about whether they want Feds to lobby the university for 2-ply toilet paper. And to the surprise of many people, among 390 respondents, believe it or not, 90% said yes. So Seneca and I wrote a report that explains this in more details, and we also listed some of students' concerns, such as plumbing issues and economic costs, and our recommendations, which is to continue working with the university and to pass an advocacy policy, which will be coming up shortly.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for the engineering counselors or caucus? Alright, so seeing nothing, we can move on to math.
Sorry, environment.
Oh, I skip that every time. Environment.
Okay, I have nothing to report.
Do any other environment counselors have anything they want to say?
I don't think
Well, Vincent's on the call. But I assume he does not. Okay, mathematics.
I would wait for any of the math counselors to say anything first, and then I have something.
Okay. So anyone on the call who is from math, you guys have anything to report?
Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Alright, so MassHop held its general meeting about 2 weeks ago. It was very successful. And also we had Seneca come and drop by and give a very good spiel about Feds, which was good because we had a lot of I think there was a lot of feedback and all that, and like there was a lot more awareness about Feds and like connected between MassHop Feds and like about like students and how they can approach Feds for various things and all that. Basically just spreading awareness. And also I'd say that it was probably one of the most successful general meetings that we've had in many terms.
Nice, that's great.
Really good lasagna too.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I'm just going to respond as I was there. Successful and delicious.
Alright. Does anyone have any questions for math talk before we move on? Alright, so not seeing anything, we can move on to science. Anyone have from science?
Sure. I met with Kiana on behalf of our caucus. That's the president of Science Society, and discuss the new designates policies and Science Society is the only society that named a designate, Austin. We discussed other items including SciSoc bundles, their elections with the Fed's elections, and doing tag team promotion between the science counselors and the society. Moving forward, we'll have more discussions. The board of directors for Science Society has, that's Science Society's council and board are the same entity, and they have, they completed their last meeting last Wednesday. So, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about it. All right, so does anyone have any questions? All right, in that case, we can move on to Cambridge. The Cambridge representative has something to say. All right, Kitchener? Okay, Stratford? Nope. St. Jerome's?
Nothing too much, just that our president of the St. Jerome Students Union will no longer be president of the winter term, so I'll be filling in that position.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And Renison. Okay. So we can move on to the next section of our agenda, general orders. And so first up, we have the 2-ply toilet paper policy. And so I will let Seneca and Lenny speak to that.
Okay, so Lenny noted it earlier in his engineering report. We do have an attachment to the agenda for this. Hopefully you had time to read it. The numbers are a little bit outdated because the poll was still open and students could still participate. So the numbers have gone up and the percentage is close to 90% of students request 2-ply toilet paper. I will say, I think it's probably, I'm not sure if it's appropriate to make this outright an advocacy policy, but I think as an advocacy resolution or stance of council that we have for the next, in addition to our current governing year, for the next governing year, so we pass at least for a 2-year governing period, would be appropriate. This is something students want. I think listening to their voice and implementing it is useful. I also though think that in terms of other asks for the executives and areas that I think are perhaps a little bit more important, like sexual violence prevention and response, freedom of expression policies, things like that, the Federation is also lobbying for. Those asks can get diluted when we have a ton of things to do and there's a lot of multitasking. I think it's more appropriate to focus on these sitting policies, and I would like to see this as a stance of council. This is something we would like adopted through advocacy, but again, policies are prioritized to stances in terms of actual advocacy done by the executives. So, especially in the university setting. So I'd like to see this be moved to a resolution instead of a policy, if that's amenable with Lenny as well.
Lenny, would you like to speak to that? Yeah, okay, I'm sure you speak later. Savannah.
I just have some comments that Matt left me with about the 2-ply toilet paper policy, kind of in line with what Seneca was saying. He does not believe that this may be the best use of time or Fed's advocacy resources, and will likely not make this a priority for the moving forward this year, knowing that, as Seneca said, there's a lot of other advocacy goals right now. So we just wanted that kind of made clear and noted. I think making it a resolution makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's that.
Thanks. Okay, cool. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say to this? Lenny, are you really not going to speak to it?
Okay, yeah, now Lenny wants to.
All right, go for it, Lenny, yeah.
I just want to say this is something that students overwhelmingly want FEDS to support, and it's something that, as the representatives of FEDS, and this is something our constituents want, and that impacts virtually every member of this university. I think it's something that's fair for FEDS Council to support as an advocacy policy. We only had a single Reddit post, and that saw 390 respondents, which is very, very rare. It's quite a tremendous rate. 90% students favor this. So this is something that really impacts students, and for sure, it's not as important as the sexual violence initiatives that Richard is working on, and it's not the same as a freedom of expression, but this improves the quality of students' lives. This improves the quality of the student experience, and as the representatives of these constituents, if this is what our constituents want, this is what they want FEDS to lobby on, then why should we not lobby on it on their behalf. So that's the first point. My second point in support of the advocacy policy is that this is also about fairness. A lot of staff members, sorry, not a lot, but some staff members, such as in Needles Hall, they have access to 2-ply toilet paper. And so if they have access to it, why shouldn't students also have access to 2-ply toilet paper? And it's a point of egalitarianism. There shouldn't be different standards of care between students and staff. If staff has 2-ply, then students should also have 2-ply. But currently students don't. And it would be fair to have as representatives, again, it would be fair to have feds officially advocate on behalf of students. We know that there are possibly some issues with 2-ply toilet paper, potentially plumbing issues, potentially economic costs. Although currently the university's cash and cash equivalent is $53 million. So I'm sure they can find some way to put the money in. In terms of plumbing, we know it's possible for this university to get 2-ply toilet paper because Laurier has 2-ply toilet paper. So that initiative could be done. So overall, I just want to speak in support of the advocacy policy. This is something students overwhelmingly want. And it's a point about fairness and egalitarianism between the standards of care of staff members and our constituents whom we are supposed to represent.
Okay, so first off, Lenny, does that mean that you're not okay with changing this from a policy to a resolution?
That is correct.
I would like to note, Lenny, a resolution is still is active for the amount of time listed or for the governing year, whichever is listed. So if we say a 2-year window that we want this as an advocacy priority as a resolution, then it is one, but it doesn't permanently enter into our advocacy policy record. And the policies are prioritized to it, but it's not as though we do not advocate for it. It would just be we prioritize advocacy on our listed policies, and then we also advocate for additional resolutions, similar to the mascot motion regarding lobbying the university to change our mascot from that dumb lion thing to a goose. You can quote me on the dumb lion thing.
We will. It's a live stream. And sorry, so that is Jason, Savannah, and then Oliver.
So what I'd like to say about this issue is, first of all, I'd like to point out that as far as I understand, the full consultation on this issue has occurred solely through Reddit. And while I think Reddit is an excellent view of getting like a picture of people's viewpoints, I do not consider it a representative sample of the student population. So I think especially when it comes I'm not going to argue on whether or not students would rather there be 2-ply toilet paper. Where my argument lies is whether that should be a priority, as I personally think that that should not be a priority for feds to advocate that. I also question whether necessarily, again, I do not know full details about cost, but I wouldn't necessarily say students would think that should be a cost priority of the university in terms of how to spend their limited funds, which yes are limited however large they are. So I'd say this isn't something that feds as a whole should be advocating for, although of course I would encourage Lenny and any other interested counselors to bring it up on their own with appropriate people in the administration.
I think it was Savannah next, yeah.
I saw Carly had her placard, so I'm happy to
Yeah, can I yield my time to start?
Sure.
I was essentially just going to say the same thing as Jason. I understand that this is important, but we're working with a population that isn't necessarily representative of the entire university, and to say that 90% of students believe this is making a huge kind of statistical error. I don't think it's best for feds to, I think it's good for feds to reach out through Reddit to engage with different types of students who aren't normally involved with it. Like, it's a good platform, but I think to take it as given legitimate statistics is very, it's not very official for us to do, so it looks kind of bad. And also just given that there's so many other things on our plate, to be prioritizing toilet paper will possibly limit our opportunities to negotiate with the university if we're playing around with things like this.
Okay. So I think next up we had Oliver, then we have Josh, then we have Savannah, then Jack, and then then Jack, and then Lenny, and then Alex.
Alright, so I'd like to say, as someone who has used firsthand the washroom facilities on UW on campus, that I think it would be good to advocate for 2-ply toilet paper on campus. Logistically speaking, if you're considering plumbing issues, what's the difference between using double the amount of 1-ply toilet paper versus half the amount of 2-ply toilet paper? Yeah, I think it really would make a difference for the comfort of our students as well, and just for overall convenience as well. It's very nice, you know, it takes time about having to really get the water and stuff.
Fair enough. So Josh, you're next.
Yeah, I just want to make one point here, and first of all, I want to begin by thanking Lenny and Seneca for bringing this up. I think it's something which we've all heard from one time here or another, since we've sort of been here. I know I've heard it since first year. But I just want to address one point that Lenny made. He said that this is something that students overwhelmingly agree with, and I know people have already made points about students. My point is that students have also made, and I think to an even greater degree, concerned with other issues, like sexual violence on campus, like other issues which students face. So while that isn't delegitimizing to this issue of 2-ply toilet paper, we should also put it into focus that while students care about this, they also care about a lot of other things, which also seem to impact students a lot heavier than having 1-ply toilet paper does. So I think that's just something counselors should keep in mind, is that in terms of importance, while this is certainly important to a degree, there are also many things which affect people's lives on campus, which are also, I think, from my perspective, more important.
I agree with him. You know, it's not the most important issue. While it is important, you know, like free speech policy, adding legal services to the tuition so that people get free, students get legal service provided. These are huge issues that Fed should be putting most of their effort into. But also, one of our roles is to use our experience as students to improve the everyday lives of students. And I feel like issues like these will improve the everyday lives of almost every single student, because, you know, we all use the washroom. Most of us use the washrooms in Waterloo, and this will be one thing that will just improve the lives just a little more for every single student. I think that's one of the main goals of Fed, use our experience as students and to talk with students just to help improve their lives at the University of Waterloo, whether it be huge policies like free speech or changing the toilet paper in washrooms.
Sure. Okay, so it's Lenny, then Alex, then Ben, then Josh. Is that a good? Okay, Austin, and then I'm gonna say we just vote on this. All right. So Lenny, I think it's your turn though.
Yeah, so the preamble to this short discussion is I'm quite surprised about the passions revolving around 2-ply toilet paper. I honestly thought this would be something we can all just, you know, raise our hand, give it a rubber stamp, and pass it on. But there seems to be several concerns. One is about funding. Does the university have the funds to do this? Is this the good use of the university's money? And to that, I would like to say that one of the suggestions in Seneca and my report is to look into the economic costs. But what we do know is that the university is worth $2 billion. Its revenue in fiscal 18 was $53 million. Fiscal 17 was $56 million. So given that the university makes tens of millions of dollars every year, I would say that there is enough economic funds to support maybe a couple of $1,000 or tens of $1,000s of a pocket change for toilet paper. There was also a concern, I think, brought up by one of the VPs about criticizing the methodology of our survey. Is it fair to use Reddit as a way to outreach to students? Is it a representation of the general student population? The feedback for that is, if we don't use Reddit, what other means are there to reach out to students? We don't have currently our own mailing list, and I think it would be very skeptical to request this as a question to be sent to all the students, unless they agree. So Reddit, sure, maybe it's not the best representative of reaching out to students, but at the moment, it's probably one of the best. So this is like an analogy of what Churchill said, you know, democracy might not be the best, but it's the best we got. So that's the same applies to Reddit. And I would know that there's a lot of people on Reddit who have different sentiments. We've got conservatives, liberals, libertarians. Some people are even on the far right and far left. So that's just not a full representation of students, but it really is the best we got. When the mental health policies were being discussed on Reddit, that actually did not even receive 90% student support. among those who responded. So I'm not trying to criticize the importance of different issues. What I'm trying to say is that this is something students really do support. It's very rare when you can get 90% of respondents to all agree on one thing. And there was also some discussion about the prioritization of this resolution. And I fully agree, this is not as important as sexual violence prevention. This is not as important as freedom of right speech. This is certainly not as important as the Fed's legal service, which I would like in the meeting in 1 minute to be recorded that Councillor Lenny highly supports, because KW prevent is really shithole and it's terrible. But really, I'm sorry. So really,
yeah, Lenny, can you wrap up?
This resolution, because this is not the most prioritized. Is that a reason for not making it into one of our advocacy policies? Just because it's not the most prioritized, is there a limit to how many prioritized items feds can have? Because the two-ply toilet paper really does affect every single student. It will improve students' experience, and it's something that we see other universities are doing. So it would make sense that Waterloo, being a very innovative university, let's also do two-ply toilet paper. Given the backing of the student population, that our constituents agree with this policy, 90% respondents agree with it. I think it would be in the best interest of our constituents that
Lenny, please wrap up.
We do what they want.
Thank you. Okay. So who was next? Alex, yes.
So I think we're overthinking this a little bit. Passing this policy isn't mutually exclusive with other advocacy goals. And the thing is, this is an easy win. This isn't a complex problem. This is just as easy as saying, hey, Ferritin, can you get us some better paper? Like, we don't need to create all this controversy. I will be supporting this, whether it's a policy or a resolution, because I do think that although it might not be the most pressing issue, this is something that students will benefit from. This will be something that students will appreciate, and this is good optics for feds. Feds doing something good to help out ordinary students. I think we don't need to overthink this. Let's just pass this and advocate for this along with all the other things that have been discussed that are important advocacy goals.
Okay, so I think we have Ben, then Josh, then Austin, then we're voting.
Yes.
So Ben, go for it. Ben?
Was that Ben as in me?
Yes, only Ben.
Okay,
Oh.
yeah, I never,
Sorry,
Sorry, my mistake, I misread it.
meant to make a comment.
Yeah, Wrong Zhao?
Ronzao? Also,
Wrong Zhao, you wanted to say something?
Maybe type in the chat and let him know to try
Yeah,
to.
he's.
no, we cannot hear you, Ronza.
Yeah, maybe easier if you just type what you have to say.
Okay, Ronza, can you type out what you have to say? And we'll go to Josh and then we'll come back to you. Is that okay? You assume that's okay? Joe.
Look, again, Alex made it perfectly clear. We don't have to go on this all day long. I think, look, I just want to say two very quick things and I'll be done with this whole situation. The first is, I don't think people are divided on this issue. I feel like every person who's spoken has started off by saying they support the idea of promoting two-ply. That's not the issue. The question is, do you then use the valuable time that you have to talk about two-ply versus talking about something else? Because while you can advocate for both, it's a matter of time, and how much time you have. It's not that people disagree, it's a matter of what you prioritize. And that's the first thing. Just look. The second thing is, Lenny, nobody was saying that Reddit isn't valuable. I don't think anybody here was saying that Reddit isn't an important way of communicating with students. I think the concern was, if you're going to pass off a statistic as being representative of 90% of the student body, it needs to be properly acquired, and I don't think people appreciate, or at least I didn't see that the 90% sort of statement was reflective of statistically accurate information, whether or not a majority of students agree, which I think is the case. So look, that's all I have to say. I think this is a good motion. That's just kind of.
Oh, sorry. In the first pass, I meant to say.
No, Lenny, no, you don't need to say Lenny. Lenny? Yes. Thank you. All right, Austin.
Yeah. I'd like a motion to make this a resolution for a 2-year governing period.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Alright, Seneca will second. Do either of you guys need to talk to it, or are we all, I think Seneca's already explained the value was changing it. Does anyone else want to say anything to it, or can we just vote on changing it to a resolution from a policy?
And for clarity of all present, a vote for yes will still lead to a vote afterwards on whether or not to actually pass it. This is just an amendment.
Yeah.
So strike policy and replace it with a resolution.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any discussion on this. So all in favor of changing it from a policy to a resolution? Or just, is anyone opposed or abstaining? Does anyone just want their vote noted if it passes?
Some people are.
Yeah, if you want your vote noted or...
Lenny wants his vote against noted.
That would be a vote against from me.
Who's me?
This is wrong now.
Oh, we can hear you now. Do you want... Great.
I'm calling in right now. My mic cut out, I think.
Okay.
And Jerry, do you want your vote noted? Anyways, Jerry voted against as well, but I don't think he wants it. No, he doesn't need it voted.
So it passes, we just have one noted vote now.
By Lenny.
Okay, cool. So we can go back to our main motion. We are now discussing it as a resolution instead of a policy. Yeah, Austin, are you still gonna talk to it?
I'd like to call this question.
Alright, delightful.
Do we actually need to call a question? Like, does anyone go out and bother speaking so we don't have to do it?
If there's no one speaking, then I'll take my own questions.
Okay, cool. So let's vote on the motion then. So all in favor of the motion now as a resolution instead of a policy? Is anyone opposed or abstaining, / do they want their vote noted?
I'd like an opposition vote noted.
Okay.
If anyone else, Katie wants an abstention noted.
Can you have my vote in favor noted?
Sure.
Can I vote in favor noted?
Sure. So Jack's vote in favor noted, Josh's vote in favor noted.
Anyone else in favor?
In the chat, if you want it noted, please say so.
Rongzhao votes no, noted.
Is this a vote to call, or is this?
No, this is a vote for passing the resolution.
A vote to call?
No, because there are no more speakers. Yeah. So instead.
Wait, sorry, is this a motion to move it to a resolution instead?
That passed. This is a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, sorry, please note a yes vote then from me.
Can you say who it is?
I support this.
Okay, Lenny wants to vote in favor noted.
And Rana wants in favor noted. And Yusuf wants to vote in favor noted.
Did we just do a vote count?
No.
No.
Or can I request a vote count?
I don't want to go through everyone.
No, it's fine. We can clearly see that it passes. And anyone who's requested it noted is having it noted.
So I just put my vote as noted.
Alright. Okay, so that's
meanwhile for passing.
That's a good one, sorry. You should tell this one too.
Order.
I like to give my time to Kurt.
No, we just move on.
Yes.
We're just wasting time, guys.
Yes, the resolution has passed. We will now proceed to the next item on the agenda.
Alright, so we're moving on to the prohibiting funding from external student unions. So Seneca, do you want to talk to this yet?
I'll move the item.
Alright, seconder? Sven? Okay, cool. Seneca, do you want to talk? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'm just jotting down for a second. Sure. So I'd like to. So first and foremost, I'm going to speak to it quickly. I'm going to make quick amendments. So I put this on here because I do not want to repeat of what happened at Windsor to happen at Waterloo. What happened at Windsor was clubs were funding Canadian Federation of Students, and members of certain clubs that were getting that funding then decided to run for the Windsor exec, then left USA and joined CFS, and now they're in an embattled lawsuit to get out of CFS 1 year later, and they can't leave because CFS said that their referendum to leave, which got 90% in favor of leaving, failed. Or like didn't have enough voter turnout to be considered. And now they're going to try to hold another one. They tried to hold one, I think, a couple of months ago, and they didn't get enough votes in favor in that one to actually leave. So there's this giant like legal debacle right now with them, and this is pretty standard for schools that enter CFS and want to wish to leave. So that's what it speaks to. I understand that there's more this could affect based on the current wording, and I would like to move to refer it to first to IAC and COPS to determine those subsidiaries, clubs, and societies for whom exemptions will need to be made, and what such exemptions would be, and then from the IAC and COPS then refer to PPC all those materials and opinions to make amendments to the language.
I will second that motion.
All right, either of you guys want to talk to that, or okay? If Jason and Seneca don't want to talk to that motion, to refer it.
The motion to refer is just because there's.
Yeah. Do you guys
I think language can be better fleshed out to make sure we're protecting clubs, especially groups like liberals and conservatives, NDP, etc., that have outright political ties but aren't involved in political lobbying on post-secondary education necessarily, like CFS is or USE is. So I just want to make sure we're not harming anyone by virtue of this.
So I think it's Savannah, Alex, and Josh.
That's in the main motion. This is a motion to refer.
Yeah, this is on the motion to refer that we're about to talk to.
But that is, yeah.
Okay, so Savannah and then Alex?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to say, timing-wise, this probably brought to our first meeting of COPS and IAC in January, just as kind of like a FYI.
Okay, Alex.
So a few comments on this. I like the thought behind this because I've done a lot of thorough research into the Federation of Students, and they have done, or not the Federation of Students, the Canadian Federation of Students, not Feds. They have done a lot of sketchy things like funding slates for execs and suing universities and student unions when they try to get out of CFS. But as you said, right now the current language is a bit vague as to what clubs this might apply to. We need to be a bit more clear that partisan clubs can still get funding from their local electoral district associations. And that, say if a think tank that does political lobbying wants to get a club to listen as a speaker and that is willing to pay that club for food or whatever, that won't be prevented. If we get a think tank or a lobbying organization having a speaker being hosted by a club.
Look, I agree entirely with what Alex said here. I think the intention is good and it's fair, but the wording really does need to be fleshed out, which is extremely important, because wording matters, especially when it comes to interpreting those words, and we have to be very careful that it does not unintentionally harm certain clubs, and not just partisan clubs, right? I mean, full disclosure, I'm a young liberal, Alex is a young conservative, like we both agree on this, because this isn't partisan, it's about ensuring that there's a level of activism on campus that is maintained. But also not just partisan clubs. I think this should extend to all clubs, period. Because I think if you create a list of clubs which are exempt from this, then I think it may just make it harder for clubs which are developed in the future to get on. Particularly if a club just wants to have funding paid for just one event, now they have to get on the list for that one event, and it may just become unnecessarily complicated. I think clubs just period on blank should be exempted from this proposal, or sorry, this amendment to the policy 41. And I think the second thing, just very quickly, is I think it should be a simple majority rather than 3/4 majority vote, or at least a 2/3 majority rather than a 3/4 majority, because I think that's a little too restrictive. And I think even in sort of a situation where you would need an exemption, I think you could find perfectly good cause to vote in favor of this, but I think a 3/4 majority may make it too difficult for that club who approaches council for exemption to actually get that exemption. So I would recommend that. I mean, I know they're going to discuss the details further in various committees, but I think, from my perspective, exempt all clubs from this amendment, as well as decrease the threshold from 3/4 majority to either a simple majority or at the max 2/3.
All right, so are we good to vote on sending this? Yeah, okay.
So the reason clubs is specified in there is because clubs on our campus some clubs do currently receive funding from CFS. Well, in the minority, I didn't check with the club's manager. Not just minority of clubs, but also minority funding total at very little. But it's a similar pattern to what started at other universities that then led to a situation where those student unions were in suit, wasting student money on a lawsuit against CFS. I don't know how that best flesh that out. I'll wait for IAC's recommendations on it.
Can I look? I just want to. I'm not sure the exact wording here, so something please help me. But I want to add like a second clause to this, which would require that the committees consult with the various clubs who might be impacted by this.
IAC already has a requirement and procedure.
Okay, good. Because I think like the various clubs, and not just again political clubs, but any club that is receiving this kind of funding, be consulted, and that they be at the table when this thing is being fleshed out.
Alright, before we just vote on sending it, do you wanna talk?
Oh, I just want to say, like, if just for a proper consultation period, it might be a little more delayed, just so we can send out maybe like a survey to clubs.
It's just said in the winter.
Oh.
The motion to refer to IAC and COPS to determine subsidiaries, clubs, and societies for whom exemptions shall be required, what exemptions there may be thematically, and then IAC and COPS shall refer to PBC all materials, opinions, and information for updates to this amendment, and then PBC shall return it to council in the winter term.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Alright, so in that case, all in favor of the motion to refer this motion? All in favor? Okay. All opposed? All abstaining? Oh, sorry, opposed? Nope. Sorry, abstaining?
Nope, I had my hand up too
If
long.
anyone in the call has a vote they want to note, please enter it now.
Yeah, because I don't hear want to vote noted. The motion's passed. People on the call don't have to just tell us their vote. Only tell us your vote if you want it noted.
No.
No one here wanted it noted.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just going to put a note as deputy speaker that any counselor who has specific concerns about this, I recommend they contact Savannah and Seneca, and they can ask that, and they are entitled, as I've said earlier, to ask Savannah for when it's going to come up at IAC, to the time and location of that meeting if they wish to attend.
Yes, Josh.
Just a question. Are clubs also allowed to attend these meetings?
So IAC is a confidential committee, so what I could do is have a consultation meeting on this amendment if people would like that, knowing that IAC is a confidential committee. So what I can do is I'll meet with IAC and maybe get their initial thoughts, and then have a consultation meeting knowing that IAC is a confidential committee overall.
Note that it's confidential because it deals with club and service discipline and stuff, like including clubs, president, executives, and stuff like that. So volunteer discipline is conducted by IAC.
So I'm happy to do have a meeting specific for this that would be kind of like separate from IAC, but otherwise they can know when it's being discussed, just they wouldn't be able to attend.
In that case, I'd also just suggest any counselors not in IAC who have something to say should also ask Savannah about that consultation session and go to it.
Absolutely. I can send like a group email to council with the dates in winter term.
Okay, so we can move on to the ratification of winter 2019 engineering vacancy filling. And Jason, I'll let you talk about it.
We need a seconder for this motion. Okay, so as some people may recall at our November meeting, we passed the society designates policy, and as part of that process, there was a point of order raised by Mariko that made Katie Arnold a designate for the vacant engineering council seat for the remainder of this term, essentially giving her a vote on council. Because some people felt, including myself, that such designate decisions should go through governing body of the Engineering Society. So at Engineering Society, Board of Directors had their meeting last Sunday. At that meeting, we both endorsed the appointment of Katie for the remainder of this term, aka this meeting right now. And we also at the same time selected Mariko, who's the A Society president, therefore the off-term president during the winter, to hold that vacancy during the winter, so that during the winter also both Katie and Mariko can have a vote on council. So this is just per policy to ratify that selection by NSHOP. Anyone who wants to, I did provide to Elizabeth the text of the motion that was passed by the NSHOP board. If anyone wants to see it, they can contact me and I'll provide a copy to them.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to say about this before we vote to ratify this? Yeah,
Just a quick note, if no by-elections are held in the winter term, but if a by-election somehow managed to get hold to fill the seat before the end of this term, the seat would be filled by these by-elections. It's not like, this is a pro tem appointment, and it's not an actual, just filling the vacancy on a pro tem basis.
Yeah, so if no one has anything to say, then
Katie Arnold's, I did type pretty good.
Oh
yeah, Katie Arnold asked who's responsible for running a by-election. Seneca, do you want to answer that?
Sure. Election and referendum committees typically responsible council appoints, typically sets the dates unless they're expressly authorized, unless council expressly authorizes the OC to do it. carrying out the election is done by the elections referendum officer and the research and policy officer, and then the appeals go to the ERC/ERAC, which is elections and referendum appeals committee. So that's like grievances filed against candidates, stuff like that.
So just a question.
Yep.
Just to clarify, Seneca, so what you said earlier means that if a by-election is held tomorrow, somebody would be filling the seat until January, in which case they're over.
Until
No.
the end of the term.
Until the end of the year.
Until the end, okay, I
Yeah,
see.
this motion would cease to apply as soon as there's a by-election.
Okay, I see.
Because by-election supersedes society appointing someone.
It's just that there's not lack of representation that we had for all of spring term, where Eng and math were out representatives for all of spring term.
So Katie also asked, so I assume we know by now if anyone intended to run a by-election. Want to say yes to that, I think?
I think that's a fair thing to say yes to, yes.
Okay. Is there anything else anyone wants to say about this motion?
Okay, Katie says, wait, one more.
There's the interest from students for by-election. Nobody nominates themselves for a vacancy, then nobody's going to fill it. Feds did advertise the engineering one for two terms basically, and nobody wanted to fill it in engineering.
Yeah, which I think kind of answers the question that Katie just typed. Why was there a math by-election but not an engineering one? The answer is basically, I think, that no one.
Ask her why no engineers were interested.
Yeah, it's basically that no engineering student expressed an interest in this. She notes that I did not see this advertising interesting.
Could you copy those questions and send them to me? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I think this discussion's getting circular.
Yeah. Okay. So unless anyone else has anything new to say, are we good to vote to ratify this? Yes. All right. So all in favor? Okay.
Anyone in the call, I'm going to assume you're in favor unless you can otherwise.
Yeah. So the motion passes. The motion carries.
Unless I see a whole ton of people.
If anyone wants, okay.
Yeah.
So Katie wants a noted abstention. If you want your vote noted, you can send it in the chat or raise your hand now. Okay, so Katie has a noted abstention, and I think that's it.
Actually, I'm going to put a noted abstention also in Seneca.
Okay, so we can move on. So we have the USA. I don't know what I'm doing here. Membership review. And that was supposed to be brought forward by Matt. Does anyone feel comfortable talking to this? You'll move it? Okay. Second? Alright. So, Seneca, do you want to talk to it?
Yeah, I'm just using the
Yeah.
that I muted. Sure. So the review, I talked to Matt about this actually because he was going to be leaving so that somebody could speak to it. The review is running in substantially more depth than what was anticipated because in prior years there hadn't been good procedure around what the review should look like, and mostly been like, okay, council likes what this has been doing so far, rubber stamp it, let's move forward. Last year, there was supposed to be a review conducted. It was not conducted. Council decided to delay it for this year because of other advocacy priorities at the time. It would have stretched the VP education too thin because he was also the president of USA at the time. USA's executive rotate through the presidents of the 8-member institutions. So this is the USA review panel would like additional time to make a more thorough report to council and issue a recommendation based on current data, policy stances, achievement of advocacy goals, and budget assessment. Matt would like this to come in February instead of January so that there's effective time for this to go to the Education Advisory Committee to review the report and issue corollary recommendations and then send it to council for a decision on whether or not to remain a member of USA.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say to this before we vote? Okay, I'm not saying anything. All in favor? Okay. So the motion carries. Does anyone want a noted vote? I'm not saying anything. I'm going to assume no. Okay, perfect. So then we can move on to the corporate and governance planning policy. And that was brought forward by Katie and Seneca. As Katie does not seem to be able to talk, I think it makes sense for Seneca.
I'll move it. Is Katie good to second it?
I haven't. Does anyone else want a second?
I'm assuming Katie put her name in it,
Yep,
so
Katie
we
said
can
please.
assume she seconded
Okay,
it.
so-
Or please, actually.
Okay, well, yeah, so this is just one of the recommendations. We conducted a governance review in 2014 that came out in 2015. It was a classified document for quite some time, and then the board of directors this year decided that nothing in this document warrants being confidential, and membership has a right to know our failings as an organization and our strengths as an organization. And so it is on the library page of the Fed's website. Please feel free to take a gander. It's got some really good recommendations for governance. One of the things that recommended was strong communications policies from council governing and policies governing the expectations for councillors and directors, which have been solved in procedure through directors and councillors' code of conduct. Another thing recommended though was having strengthened governance and corporate planning that gets approved by council. So having long-range plans be prepared by the board and approved by students' council, having annual plans within the framework of the long-range plan the council approves be approved annually by the board in consultation with council or students, and having the executive action plans not go to the Board of Education, or sorry, Board of Education, geez, the Board of Directors, which is primarily a fiduciary responsibility, legal, and HR body, and go to student elected representatives because at the end of the day, the executive are student government facing and less so corporate facing. Now, bear in mind, like one of the things I'd like to see in this policy when it goes to committee is that we give more flexibility on the executive action plans, like have the action plans be approved by the exec committee, but before approval must be consulted with the council, or the council ratifies the process of publishing the executive plans, because to say that it was conducted in a fair, reasonable manner and did reflect consultation and campaign wishes of the executives, because at the end of the day, they are elected representatives. But right now, this stuff lives at the board, and that isn't really the appropriate place for it.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say to it? Yeah, Kurt.
I just have some notes that Matt wants me to present. He says, if you expect furtherance from advocacy objectives, do not expect SMART goals. In the current state, executive action plans are generally meant to be created with actionable pieces in mind and are approved by board as the general performance overview body. He thinks this is a valuable discussion. There's also one that he would recommend to see. Wow, sorry. Is also one that I would also much rather see recommended to the board for discussion than decided by council. Please note that no reference is made to the election platforms of exec within the policy. This body has made reference in the past to the importance of elected representation, and some consideration should be given to platform points of the elected executive.
I would like to note that is incorrect. It does note the campaign, it does note not campaign goals, but or campaign promises, but it does speak to executive goals as being elected representatives. I would also like to note that I'm not sure why Matt thought it wasn't going to go to the Board of Directors for comment, but it is noted that it's going to the Board of Directors for comment in the actual text of the motion itself. So I think that addresses both of the things he brought up.
Okay.
Could you send me what he wrote, by the way?
Yeah, sure. And the last one he said was, what occurs in the circumstance that bicameral agreement cannot be arrived at, it is the board's responsibility to make actionable commitments and is legally obligated to do so with the general welfare of students in mind, and with consideration of students' council advocacy priorities.
Will you send me that one as well?
Yeah.
Okay, Savannah and Seneca.
I did have a note myself about the timeline for the exec action plan. I didn't think it was necessarily most feasible. If I remember correctly, they wanted to have the policies asking to see a draft or some notes for May and then have it ready for June. And in my own experience and experience from exec in the past, it was a very tight time considering you kind of get thrown in, and it does take time to get your feet under you in a role like this. And so I would like to see a little more consultation with the executive on some of the contents in this policy, knowing that it does directly affect the future executives.
Sure. Yeah, sorry.
Sure, so I just quickly address that point. I literally kept the current requirements in corporate procedure set by the board for when these are. I didn't want to make any substantive changes to them until it was in committee, so we could have those conversations on what that looked like, because the board wants to change it so there's more time to flesh out the plan, so that spring term is like, hey, here's your plan, you've been transitioned, because the first month is really heavy transition. Like, there's no time to produce a plan in that based on your campaign goals. Now, arguably, you should be putting together your campaign goals into an action plan as you're entering, but there are a billion things being thrown at you, and that's not always a given or an easy task. So board wanted to see that extended a little bit later into spring, like maybe month or month and a half. So yes, I just used the current rules, and I thought we could discuss those discussions once it's in committee. But if council was adamantly opposed to everything or most of the stuff in the policy and said no to first reading, then I didn't want to spend time on it in committee if it was going to be set. If people were not going to support the idea behind it. That's why consultation was planning to happen when it's at committee as opposed to.
Okay, does anyone else have any comments before we vote to send this to PBC? Seeing nothing, all in favor of sending this to PBC? Okay. That passes in this room. Right, all opposed or abstaining? Got it.
Any oppositions or abstentions in the chat?
Alright, so opposition or abstention, sorry?
Opposition.
Noted? Okay. Any noted votes in the chat, this motion?
Or any opposition of any? I don't see any. I'm just going to assume, Miranda, that your abstention is non-noted unless you say otherwise.
Okay. So moving on, we have the consideration of an executive feedback session. And Jason's going to
Yeah,
take
can
that.
you please open up?
Yep, very sure.
So because in the past meeting we brought up the idea of
Is there
holding...
a second for the motion?
Oh, right, sorry. Yeah, can we have a second, please?
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, so in our past meeting, there was interest expressed in holding an executive feedback session. Because we need to actually set up framework for it, I wrote this motion. The first clause basically sets up the framework and says it to happen immediately after this meeting, although if councilors want it to happen at a later time, that could easily be amended. The second be it resolved clause is actually something that largely stands on its own. Just a mechanism I thought it would be helpful if people want to be able to anonymously ask questions to the exec. I can route it while protecting anonymity, so that's something that could also be passed on its own.
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to start that I think the idea for feedback is fantastic. I think it's something that myself and the other exec have said since we started, is that we welcome feedback and discussion all the time. My concern is that I want to make sure that this is a constructive opportunity, and I know that there was some frameworks listed here, but I'm not sure if it has specifics. And so if there's a way that we could, if there's an ad hoc committee that is struck, maybe they can work to make a framework that the feedback will be generated in or will be focused on. Like, is it actionable from our action plan specifically? And I believe I remember reading that in here, but
I'm going to direct you to the end of the number 3 there. Comments related to their stated goals, such as an executive action plan, will be encouraged, but all comments are welcome.
I just want to make sure that everything is constructive and it's not an opportunity how am I going to word this? Feedback for the sake of feedback is excellent as long as it's constructive. And so I want to make sure this is an opportunity that it's not just maybe say like things you don't like about the person, or maybe how like I don't like the way they email or something like that, but it's actually constructive, like, hey, maybe you could do X in your emails instead of, you know what I mean? So I want to make sure that any comments are framed
more suggestions for improvement than complaints or something like that.
Yeah, and so I just want to make sure that that is made clear in whatever framework we decide to move forward with.
So maybe on Jason's one.
Yeah, so to respond to that, first of all, I'm also going to draw your attention to the underlying part of number 4, which is a specific, and I'm actually going to better explain everything that's here, since I realize some of it may be assumptions. I've largely based this on NSHOC's feedback mechanisms, because NSHOC every term does an executive feedback session. I've once actually been on one term the chief feedback officer and ran such a session, so that since this motion calls for me to actually moderate the feedback session, I can tell you how I would do it, which is partly phrased in this motion, is that it would basically be a semi-casual session where like people would be encouraged to say stuff, and I kind of structured partially like by exec, but also like overall to try get it in parts. And everything, while it's happening, everything would be taken down when we're said, but then so it would be, as this motion says, that would be myself and Chris that go through it afterwards and filter it, and no one will ever see the raw minutes. The key thing is it will be filtered down such that it is only constructive feedback, as well as also only being anonymous feedback, and then that will be sent over to the execs and to the officers of council. Because yes, objective is to focus on constructive stuff. Of course, if anyone wants some of this framework changed, I'm certainly open to hearing that.
Josh.
I'm just curious, what is this designed to do which council already does not do? Like, what is the impetus for this which council does not already have the mechanisms to accomplish?
I can answer. Yeah. So in general, like I'm assuming your point is like we make comments to the exec all the time.
Yeah.
Why?
What's the
Why?
difference here?
So the difference here is kind of like it's partly a bigger picture thing, like definitely hearing stuff in relation to their goals, how they're achieving it, like kind of doing a bigger picture evaluation while in council we're normally talking about like smaller matters at hand. It's also, the key thing is I think the non-MIDI is not a feature that should be underrated here. Is part of it, there might be comments people have to say that like might not come up in a normal meeting, so it's like really, and also just to get a feel, because like some people during regular council meetings like often aren't speaking as much, especially when it comes to like executive reports. It's often a small number of people that, so this would be an opportunity to definitely engage maybe a larger portion of council and to get like a larger view without people having to like feel more open, and also using a bigger picture.
Yes.
So before this, I did go and read like, I think it's Valesco, is that what it's called?
What?
The Ontario Society for Engineering Societies or something like
Yeah.
that. It's some weird name. Anyways, I read that and I read like the Canadian Federation of Engineering Students mechanisms for this, and they do something similar. And I read through some of the procedures for it. It seems, in my opinion, fairly solid. It seems that the point is, here's what you campaigned on, here's what you put out as what you were going to do based on what you campaigned on, here's all this other, stuff that council or board or other committees have tasked you with doing on top of that. How do we assess, have you met these goals? If you haven't met an action plan goal, is it because we're giving you too much stuff? So it is just as much a reflection on council as it is the executive. I think the important thing here that Savannah hit on is it's got to be filtered for constructive information, but it seems that that is included what Jason wrote. I also think it's useful that Jason, I'm glad that I was not included here. I think the chair of the board not being in the room is an appropriate thing, because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for executive discipline of all my directors. And I would not want to be in the room if I'm being told this sort of stuff. Like, I should be handed something to have a conversation, sit down and have a chat about it. So I think though it's prudent for the deputy speaker to chair the meeting, because Elizabeth will opportunity to participate too, because Elizabeth works pretty intimately with the executive on agenda items, particularly with Savannah on the matters. How do we deal with society's voting seats on council is the recent one, right? So stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or seat distributions with Richard. So.
Okay. Yes, Savannah.
Sorry, and Jason, would you be able to scroll down, or I'm not sure if it's Elizabeth who has it, to the part where it says how many times this feedback session will occur?
It only calls for once now.
I don't know where I read this then.
But it does say for the second clause about anonymous questions, that would be an ongoing thing for the rest of the year.
Okay, maybe I'm going crazy, which is highly possible. I just felt like I read something about the feedback sessions occurring in August.
You are thinking about the corporate and governance planning policy.
Okay, so sorry, thank you.
Yeah, that was going to include when it didn't structure specific stuff. In my mind, when I was writing that, was actually independent of this, so it was
this is unrelated to the matter.
It was like sit down and have a conversation about.
Yeah, Seneca, this is
So sorry, I was confusing. I think I might have been confusing the two in my comments anyway.
So I think really voting on this is voting on whether or not we want to do this today.
If people want to do it another time, I welcome an amendment to the motion for that.
Okay, so Seneca and Josh?
I would like to amend it that this occur the first Sunday in January. That's the day before classes start, which is good because it allows all the feedback to be processed before the first council meeting, so execs can get it by the end of that week, and it helps the whole term. It also gives the exec the entire winter break, effectively, to review not only their action plans, but what stuff committees, council, board committees have assigned them, and kind of filter it out. And if there's confidential stuff, go through it and be like, okay, well, how do I talk about this in a manner that I can convey and provide? So I think that's useful. So I'd like to make a recommendation for first Sunday in January, which should be the 6th.
Yes, I believe so. Okay, so let's do Josh, Savannah, and then Austin.
I moved that.
Oh, okay. Do you have a second? Josh seconds. All right. So, do either of you guys want to
Josh,
speak?
you have,
I was going to propose exactly what's on the
Okay. So does anyone want to speak to or for moving this to the first Saturday in January? Savannah.
Okay, so I do ask that. I don't know if it's entirely fair to ask exec to work on a structured holiday, knowing that what you're asking I think is important, but to say like spend your holidays going through everything council and board have tasked you with your entire action plan and write school documents so that before students start we can review it. I don't necessarily think that's entirely fair. we'll do it if that's the direction council wants to go, obviously, but I just don't know that that's a fair ask. We have also been asked to have an in-depth action plan report for our first council meeting of January, or of the winter term. So if we want, I guess I would just want to make sure that whatever date we set, because it wouldn't make sense to have a full report and then come back to do and set it earlier. You know what, I'm not using the right words, but I hope you kind of see what I'm trying to say.
For sure. Okay, so I believe it was Jack and Austin? No? Oh, sorry. There was something between us? Was it you?
No, it wasn't me.
No. Alright, so okay, so then Austin, Josh, and Seneca.
I just wanted to voice my support for choosing a day
Yeah. Okay.
Look, I guess I have a point to make, but first I want to ask Jason for a very quick answer. Do you think this thing needs to be done by January, or can we not extend this too far and still receive the same outcomes?
I think in terms of the executive receiving feedback, the closer we are to the end of the term, the less useful this whole thing is.
Okay, I see.
I can't give a specific deadline if that's what you're asking for.
So is it?
If you yield your time,
Yeah, sure.
Council did last meeting say that they would like it to be as early as possible in January if we did not hold it in December, because the feedback's supposed to be long-term, like here's what you've done great at so far, here's where you could constructively improve, see if you can implement it for the next 4 months, type of thing.
And do we know when the first council meeting is in January?
Yes, that is January 13th.
It's the second Sunday.
Well, the first Sunday after classes.
Yeah.
For clarification.
It's the second Sunday total. The first Sunday total would be when this would be happening.
Yes. First Sunday in second Sunday in January, or the first Sunday after classes begin.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so Seneca, you want to speak?
Sure. So I just note that classes begin on the
7th.
7th, and we typically, the break is like over on January 2nd. So there is additional time here. Like there's multiple weeks. It's not like you have to work over Christmas for this or day in and day out. And we'll also know the executives have produced detailed overviews of their APs for board already. So a lot of this will be using the structured detailed AP that they produced for update that they produced for board. AP means action plan. Sorry, action plan update for the board. And we'll just be going through some of the additional assignments that were taken on by council, board, or committees, and showing where that is. So a lot of the work has, I think, already been done by the executives proactively on this matter, because the board requested an update for full term about where we were at the end of 2 terms.
So Lenny has asked to speak. Are you responding?
No, I'm going to say something.
So Lenny has to speak next, and then Josh can speak. I guess at this point we're all seem to just be debating a date. I would urge people to kind of be concise, and so we can vote on this. I think we're dragging it out a little bit. But yeah, let me go for it.
I just want to say I don't understand why there's so much discussion about setting a date. Why don't we just do one today, and then we do a second one in January, so that way both
Sorry,
sides
Lenny,
are
council
happy.
already decided that's not going to happen. The motion on the floor is to set a date for January.
Josh.
I've lost my complete train of thought. I guess, look, I think I'm kind of regaining it. I think, so Seneca, you made a point earlier that part of the importance of this feedback is making sure that we're not tasking the execs with too much to do. I guess my question is, do you think that sort of setting a date too early would be doing just that? And I guess this is a question for everybody. Should we not give weight to the opinions of the execs if this is something that is directly designed to improve exec engagement?
I guess someone can speak, but before that, I'd like to say, can we suggest maybe like 10:30 a.m. the day, like on January 13th, so we all come to council a little bit early,
yes.
And then it kind of
That is
bookends
not the
the event.
motion that's on the floor now.
Can we propose an amendment?
But is that proposing an amendment for a different date and time?
Do you want to move that amendment?
Well, Seneca first answer.
Yes.
Okay, go for it. Seneca.
So, thank you. I will say I don't think it's insufficient time to do it on the 13th. I think it's probably more prudent to do it earlier in January. If the council would like more time, I think that's reasonable, but I also know that a good chunk of the work has already been fleshed out in the APs. The board and the council assigned tasks take time to think about, but they're also like, you can look through the agendas and see where this, the minutes and see what's been decided. And where that is already, those are day-to-day things that people are aware of. Board asked me to do an update on the board's annual plan, and I spent my weekend producing it for the board. I understand it's a holiday, but like, we're also volunteers, we put in time when we can. I mean, if the execs want to put it in the first week in January, which isn't a holiday any longer, they can do that. If the execs want to put it in for the next 2 weeks, they can do that without going to Christmas or Hanukkah.
My concern is actually for counselor attendance. I worry with the first Sunday of the month before classes have officially started, a lot of people will not make it back. I think if you're coming back from anywhere kind of farther away than like the GTA, you may have flights booked kind of thing, and that don't line up very well with it. I think leaving your families early is something people are likely to pass up.
Can we do a straw poll about that?
Yeah, okay.
Can we do a straw poll on people who, or basically, can you indicate if you expect that attending a meeting on January 6th would be a problem for you?
So raise your hand if it would be a problem for you.
I see 3 hands, and there's and Katie also says so.
Sorry?
During the day.
Sorry?
What time would be the meeting?
We do
Normal time.
Probably 12:30 p.m.
Yeah, kind of middle of the day.
Okay, I think there's 2 people in the chat saying so as well. So we're at
to make it 10:30 a.m. on January the 13th.
Yeah, it's a straw poll. Who feels better about that? Yeah.
Okay, I think. May I just ask you if there's any, or ask anyone any reason on why doing it before versus after that meeting?
I have no opinion whether it should be before or after the council meeting. I just think it should be on the day of the council meeting when all councilors come back from their vacation.
Okay.
My thought on before was just that we don't necessarily know how long the meetings will take to end. It's just like, if the meeting ends up ending at like 5:30, staying around till like 7:30 or something, maybe like more of an issue for some people than like knowing they're getting here at 10:30. That was my thought behind it. But yes.
I suggest we do it after and just start the meeting at 10:30, because I think one of the prudent things is to allow the executives, what we had asked the executives to prepare for the first meeting in January was a presentation, not a report. A presentation going through each item, where they were with it, and like, you know, are you 30% complete with it? What's stalling? Stuff like that, and then other stuff that was tasked by council and board, and presenting it to council, and having the reports be the last item on the agenda, and then going into the sessions. I think if we don't give them the opportunity to present it, what feedback are we going to deliver, because we don't know where they are with things. Like, they can submit a written report, but it's a lot more meaningful to hear the conversation, then ask them to leave, have the discussion, and then consolidate the constructive feedback and provide it.
Okay, are the necessary people amenable to amending the amendment to say on January 13th after the council meeting and to shift the council meeting starting time?
My motion for the first Sunday, I propose you second.
Mine isn't for the first Sunday. My motion was to have it on the same day of the council meeting.
You seconded his motion originally,
Okay.
but now you propose another.
Anyways, the motion's been friendly amended, I think, now to be the day of the council. So we're going to say day of the council meeting after the council meeting, and we're also going. Okay, and then do we have to put an amendment then to shift the council meeting start time earlier?
No, unless it's good, over on the motion.
Even though the meeting's been scheduled already?
It says normally in the procedures. We could make a motion of it anyway.
Let's just add that on to. I'll trust you to phrase that, Danica.
So council will begin at 10:30 a.m. instead, and breakfast will be provided.
Okay,
It
so.
probably won't be. Eat breakfast before you. Also, just so no one's misled here, there's only so much left in the budget.
We'll talk about this once we get some more.
All right.
Hey, so yeah, we are in this. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, sorry. Back focusing. Yeah.
So we are in discussion now of this amendment, which is now to for the January to shift the feedback session to occur after the January 13th meeting, and to shift the start time of the January 13th meeting to 10:30 a.m. Is there any further discussion on this?
All right. Seeing none, let's vote.
We're voting on the amendment now. All in favor?
Okay. All opposed? All
Any
abstained?
abstentions? Anyone in the chat
Noted.
wishes?
I'm noted because I'm not here.
Okay.
So you're noting what?
I abstain.
Okay. Anyone in the chat have a noted vote?
Susanna and Alex are both noting abstentions. This is the amendment.
Sorry, could I pose a point of inquiry?
No, we're sorry, we're voting.
Oh.
We're voting. No.
Oh,
Are you unclear on what we're voting on?
I am. Are we voting on the start at 10:30?
We're voting on an amendment that will shift the council meeting time to 10:30 and put the feedback session afterwards.
Okay. What time zone?
EST.
Here. Yeah.
This is in January also, by the way.
This is for January 13th. Council will begin at 10:30 a.m. and run its normal length. Following council, there will be an executive feedback session in camera as a committee of the whole, ad hoc committee, separate from council.
Okay, so Eastern Standard Time, so people who are in the West Coast, they would have...
We are doing a vote now. You cannot raise
Yeah.
a discussion point.
All right. So, did anyone want their votes noted? You guys had the 2 noted abstentions. Anyone-
Rangel, do you want your vote noted? Yes, Rangel wants a vote against noted. And Lenny wants a vote against noted. And some other people are typing. Okay, Rangel, your comment is out of order. Jerry wants a vote against noted. Okay, so I think nonetheless the motion, all of them. Wait, I'll wait for this one last thing to type. Okay, Benjamin, do you want your abstention noted? No, okay, no. So the motion, the amendment passes, I think even as we, okay, Youssef wants a vote against noted. So we're now back to the main motion as amended.
So I'd like to couple with this motion to approve a motion that the speaker must excuse anyone who cannot attend the council meeting, not the feedback session, the council meeting by virtue of time zone conflict. Because by moving it to 10:30, that makes it, what,
7:30.
Yeah, or 7:30 a.m. for some people. I don't know if that's unreasonable for some people, but I mean, I
I
got
mean,
6
can
for
we,
council meetings.
is this a possibility to, like, whatever, excuse them for the first, whatever, hour? Does 8:30 a.m. seem like something like that?
Can we rephrase your amendment to excuse latenesses rather than excuse absences?
Yeah. And late, this is up to, like, let's say, like an hour, is that?
Well, half hour is the default procedure, so if we're gonna get more, we should.
Does like an hour seem, excuse lateness up to an hour? Does that?
If people in the room.
Does anyone have any thought? Does 8:30 a.m. seem like a reasonable start time? Because like, you can call from your house, like you don't have to.
Yeah.
Okay, so council excuse lateness up to 1 hour for the council meeting.
Rangel wants to speak.
Alright, Rangel, go for it.
There needs to be a second on the motion.
Okay, I'll second it. Rangel, oh, you're typing something.
Call
okay.
back in.
He said we should excuse councilors until regular meeting time of, well, which would be
2 hours.
Can I just want to say something.
Sure, no, let's call the question.
Yeah, I'm just going to point out to people that normally classes at the school start at 8:30 a.m. So that's why I think 1 hour is a reasonable allowance for that.
You don't have to get dressed and like go somewhere, like you're just waking up and calling. Okay, so I think we should just vote on this. Unless anyone actually has anything else to say. I think we're debating an hour now. This is not worth an hour of our time. So, all in favor of the motion? All opposed? All abstaining? Does anyone want a noted vote? If you want a noted vote, please say so online. And
Okay, I'm assuming no one wants it noted.
okay.
So it passes. Okay, so we are now back again to discussing the main motion as once again amended. Does anyone else have anything further to say? Yeah.
Should we read the motion? Yes.
You noted the raw minutes will be destroyed, but I don't see that in here. I would like it noted that all contents of discussion will be destroyed except for the filtered commentary.
Yeah, okay, I consider that friendly.
Savannah.
Maybe it's just because I can't actually read the screen right now, but is there a timeline for the feedback? Sorry, thank you, I didn't bring my glasses. Is there like a week after the feedback session, we'll have the minutes, and then a week later, like is there that kind of structure?
No, may I answer?
Oh.
Yeah, there's no formal timeline. I can tell you that I would certainly strive to have them sent out as soon as possible. But yeah, I did not incorporate, because I didn't think is I don't see a reason why it needs to be tied to a particular council meeting since it's not going out to entire council. And as for execs responding, that's something they would be due at their leisure.
So my concern about not having a link to a timeline is the point that I think Josh brought up, or I think Seneca, I can't remember who brought it up, about that councillors wanted to see this as an opportunity to provide feedback for the remainder of the term, and if it starts delaying even further, like 2-3 weeks, you're getting into February, and that only gives us 2.5 to 3 months to implement any changes that we see feasible. So I'm wondering if
Okay, I'm going to amend my own motion to say that that the filtered minutes have to be sent within 1 week of the feedback session. Does that satisfy?
Yeah, that's fantastic, thank you.
Does anyone else have anything to say? I think it's getting ready, time to vote. Okay, so all in favor of the motion? All opposed? All abstaining? Noted? Both of you? So Curtin's going to have noted abstentions. Does anyone online want their vote noted? The motion is... sorry. Okay.
I do not see any notice in that.
Okay, cool. So we're back to the agenda. We have our last item under general orders, which is the resignation of a counselor. So Ben Easton is resigning. He was one of our science counselors.
Ben,
Yeah.
are you moving your resignation?
Yeah, I can speak to it. I'll move it, I guess, if it's
Second.
required.
All right, you can speak to it if you want to. I don't think you have to. It's a very clear item.
Yeah, I'm switching faculties, so I don't think it's appropriate to remain a science counselor while I'm not a science student.
Is there any debate on this resignation?
Okay. Do we need to vote on the resignation? It's just a...
Well, it's a motion because he put it as a motion to accept, so therefore.
It is a motion to accept because he serves at the pleasure of council as an elected, at the pleasure of his constituents as an elected representative, so
Okay.
he doesn't get the
So
choice.
all in favor of accepting his resignation? All opposed? All abstaining? Does anyone want a noted vote? All right, the motion carries.
I would like council to thank Benjamin for his service to the Science Caucus. I move a resolution that resolves council thanks Benjamin Easton for his service to council.
All right, on the count of 3.
I second.
Okay. Perfect.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
Sorry, so then 1, 2, 3, we'll all do it together. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks,
Ben.
Thanks, Emma. It's been a pleasure, it really has.
I will put a note for everyone in case they didn't fully read the documentation that Ben is also a municipal affairs commissioner and therefore will remain a non-voting member of council for the winter term, separate from this.
Can I have my speaking
Um,
He gets to speak, he's a member of council.
Okay, so sorry, we had one item of new business, correct?
Two.
2? All right. Sorry, guys.
One that got added to the agenda.
Sure. So what's our first one?
So the first one is Senate, the Senate thing. So we required that for electoral candidates for executive and student council positions that they acknowledge that they will intention to sign conflict of interest declarations that will be made public so that they know in advance what they're getting into, that they will have to disclose their conflicts of interest before they're elected to that position as part of their role in council, board, and executive. Aisha, the research and policy officer, asked for us to inquire if there were similar requirements for the Senate and Senate confidentiality agreements, so they gathered we should set such a requirement of notice for the candidates in election procedure. I asked to amend the agenda to include a referral to the Senate Undergraduate Caucus for comment on this prior to ERC recommending any changes to procedure. So that's the motion, would be that we refer consideration of the item to the Senate Undergraduate Caucus for comment.
Okay, so your motion, do we have a second? Or move, do we have a second? So Savannah seconds? All right, does anyone have anything to say to this other than what Seneca just said?
Yeah, I might make a comment. How would this apply to people who have already are like in the nomination process for
The way we're doing it this year is that you will sign the forms to the all candidates meeting to remain a valid candidate. So you will sign saying that you acknowledge that you will have to sign a public conflict of interest declaration, and you will provide the acknowledgement of that at the all candidates meeting. In the future, it will be done on the nomination form itself.
Jason.
I'd just like to declare that I will be abstaining on vote on this matter due to a potential conflict of interest as I am currently entered as a candidate for senator.
Second motion?
It was Savannah. All right, does anyone else have anything to say? Alright, so let's vote on sending this. So, all in favor? Okay, all opposed? Jack, you want to note?
No.
Alright, all abstaining?
Noted abstention.
Anyone online
And
want a noted
Benjamin
vote?
has a noted abstention. Yusuf has a noted abstention. Katie Arnold has a noted abstention. And Jerry has a noted abstention.
That carries.
Okay, the next item of new business, commissioners.
Also, Lenny has a noted abstention.
Okay, we're going too. So the next item of business is for commissioners. They are non-voting members of council. I would like to see them start coming to council. They don't like that, especially like, not necessarily every meeting. I understand that they do other things and they have basically part-time work the rest of the week. But if an item on the agenda particularly pertains to their portfolio, I'm thinking society designate policy, society relations commissioner would be a reasonable person to be here and field questions or things like that. Or if it's an education-related stuff or co-op related stuff, as we discussed the past few weeks, Connor Plant or the Economic Affairs Commissioner or Benjamin Easton should be in attendance. I'd also like to see them start filing reports to council for their work. I mean, they do work, we pay them for their work, they're accountable to council. I'd like to start seeing reports to council about their work. It doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be lengthy, but I think that's appropriate.
Okay. Is this a discussion or is it a motion?
Yeah, it's a discussion.
Okay. Yes, Savannah.
I will say I provide updates kind of on behalf of my commissioner in my report, knowing that commissioners report, like, work closely with each executive they report to, so I'm not sure if that's like an amendable piece, or that any report that they would have can be included in the
Yes,
executive
I
report.
think including the event report, so there's one, just think they should be actually attending events, if the items on the agenda pertain to their portfolio.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say to this? Alright, so seeing nothing, we can adjourn. Oh,
no,
yeah.
wait, no. First of all, we have to vote on this.
This is just discussion.
Oh, my bad.
No problem.
So then, no, we have to see if there's any other items of new business.
You're right, sorry. Okay.
Are there any other items of new business that anyone wants to raise?
I just, yeah, sorry.
Subject to the previous item, I wasn't done, sorry.
Yeah, okay, Seneca?
I'd like council to vote on the motion, wait for the result, society relations. Federation commissioners shall attend council at the very least if an item of business on the agenda pertains to their portfolio.
Okay.
I will second that motion.
So, yeah, all in favor of this motion, unless anyone actually. All right, all opposed, all abstaining. Josh, noted.
Benjamin wants a noted abstention.
Yeah, any other noted abstentions online?
Your abstention as well?
Yeah.
So this motion carries. Does anyone else have anything for new business? Okay.
Is there any plans for any council sorry, this was Councilor Lenny. Okay, is there any plans for any councilor retreats or board game nights, or just
no
council retreats?
Although, I'm just not getting a great idea. Last council meeting of the governing year, potluck. Everyone bring a dish, their favorite or something like that, and do a potluck.
We can also discuss this at a later date. It's a while out.
There was no motion to extend the meeting by 10 minutes, so we should be done by 3.
Yep. All right. So
Wait,
you.
Can I come to the motion then?
No, I have to go.
Okay, you're seconding it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm taking that as calling the orders of the day because the agenda said 3 o'clock. The meeting's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So it's adjourned.
Not that long order.
That was not that impressive.
Well,
It sounded.
No, yeah, it needs like a thicker base or something.
Well, maybe it's
Or
about
more
the
solid.
surface.
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye everyone on the call.
Seneca, can I keep my 2 placards?
Yes, you can.
Yay.
Do you want a
Thank you very
third?
much.
What?
Do you want a third?
I'm good.
You're always welcome to come to council if you want to join your Sundays.
Let's see, no. Oh no. Next time I go on a Sunday, I'm at the Walker Street second.